Chapter 732. The Uzun cavalry used thick and heavy plate armor, and the plate armor of the White Braves was especially tough and heavy. Not only that, the armor of the White Braves had been imbued with the greatest number of toughening inscriptions. This was also why they had been able to fight against the Abbasid Caliphate's Mamelukes. Swish! 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 On the walls, Wang Chang's men had chosen to restrain themselves, but the Uzun White Braves outside had chosen the exact opposite strategy. With an ear-piercing whistle, tens of thousands of arrows came whistling down like a tide, shooting toward the people on top of the city wall. At that moment, even space itself seemed to be tearing apart. Even Bai Siling grimaced at the sight of the long trails left behind by the arrows. Careful! Dodge! Loud shouts came from all over the walls as all the clan experts, including Bai Siling and Zhao Yadong, chose to dodge. The power contained in those arrows was so great that even they didn't have the confidence to block them. At this moment, the only person still standing on the walls, exposed to the rain of arrows, was Wang Chong. His expression was calm and emotionless. Boom! Hundreds of arrows pierced through the golden splitter mountain, exploding from every direction, enveloping Wang Chang's body. But when these arrows were still several zhang away, they were frozen in the air. Bzzz. Wang Chong blinked, and a cold light flashed through the darkness. In a flash, all the arrows were struck by some invisible energy and smashed to pieces, dropping to the ground. In that moment, even the roars of the White Braves outside the city dimmed. On the walls, all the clan experts and the guards looked at Wang Chong with eyes brimming with worship. Wang Chong, unmoved in the rain of arrows, was like a god, holding the hearts of the people and becoming their pillar of support. Ready! Raise the secondary walls. Following a series of creaking sounds, thick, slanted steel plates quickly rose from the city walls. Once these steel plates were raised, they immediately protected everyone. At this moment, the White Braves' second wave of attack had arrived. In the gloomy darkness, 10 Uzun White Braves were dragging a long, silvery white object behind them. Using the high speed of their warhorses, they charged toward the tall gates of the city of steel like shooting stars. Be careful! It's a siege all! A panicked shout came from the city wall. In that instant, everyone could clearly see that the tip of that silvery white object was incomparably sharp. It was shockingly a sharp siege awl that was 50 to 60 feet long. There were many complicated silver patterns on the surface of the siege awls. As long as one was in the military, they would not be unfamiliar with those silvery white patterns. They were densely packed and countless sharp runes. Everything that was engraved with such sharp runes was a top-notch siege weapon. Even a steel gate that was several feet thick would be pierced through. Bang! Before they had time to think, a heaven-shaking boom resounded in their ears. At that moment, the entire city of steel trembled as if it had been struck by a shooting star. But before this sound had faded, the sound of galloping hooves came from outside the city. A second silver-white battering ram from the Great Snow Mountain Holy Temple arrived like a bolt of lightning. Boom! A second earth-shattering boom resounded in everyone's ears. Marquis! Su Shixian stared at Wang Chong, his face ghastly pale. If they continued to attack in this manner, the gates of the city of steel wouldn't be able to hold out for long. At the start, he and Qing Sanyuan had been confused by Wang Chong's decision to have them retreat into the city. But now, even the slowest Su Shixian could sense that this wave of enemies was different from the ones he had faced before, completely different from cavalry. Because no cavalry would bring such siege awls when charging on the battlefield. This wave of enemies was far more formidable than he had imagined, and they had also come fully prepared. Don't worry about it. No matter what siege weapon they use, they won't be able to open the gates of the city of steel. Wang Chang's voice was flat and indifferent, neither loud nor soft, but it had an intimidating power. The White Braves were almost invincible in a field charge. At the very least, the cavalry under his command were incapable of stopping them, but defending a city was a different matter. Wang Chong knew what Su Shixian was worried about, but that was impossible. The gates of the City of Steel were not made of ordinary steel, but of meteoric metal that Wang Chong had brought from overseas. No matter how many sharp runes the White Brave siege awls had been engraved on them, no matter how powerful their charge, they would never be able to break through a gate made of meteoric metal. Such a thing could never happen, and Wang Chong had engraved so many defensive and toughening runes on the gate. Uzun isn't involved in production, so he couldn't have forged something of this level. It seems like it came from the Great Snow Mountain Temple. Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil. Uzun had placed far more importance on him than he had expected, but no matter what they wanted to do, they were doomed to fail. The City of Steel was his life's work, his dream. In order to establish a foothold here, he had already made ample preparations. Not even Uzun's illustrious White Braves could break this city. Pass on my order. Tell Su Kui that he can begin his preparations. Wang Chong said. Yes, Marquis. A messenger quickly responded and left. Outside the City of Steel, the White Braves were still not done with their assault. Boom boom boom. Silver battering ram after battering ram slammed into the tall gate. At this moment, there was a clattering of metal as long 5-clawed hooks were thrown up from the walls and hooked onto the edge of the wall. Go! With a roar, hundreds of White Braves jumped off their horses, their right hands gripping ropes as they used the hooks on the wall to scale the walls. Everyone, follow me. Hurry and stop them. Su Shixian grimaced and unsheathed his sword. He was the first to step out of the wall that had been blocking the volley of arrows and charge at the hooks. On the other side, the others also charged out, fully armored. The people outside the city were all incredibly powerful. If they were allowed to use their hooks to scale the walls and open the gates of the City of Steel, then the more than 100,000 craftsmen in the city would be exposed to their iron hooves. The City of Steel would suffer grievous casualties. Clang, clang, clang. The long swords hacked at the 5-clawed hooks, splitting them into two. Without these hooks, the White Braves began to drop to the ground. But before they could reach the ground, the White Braves swung their right hands, and another set of hooks latched onto the top of the wall. These White Braves immediately charged toward the top of the wall. Sir Zhang. As the Uzun's assault was at its most intense, Wang Chong glanced at the dense ranks of Uzun's White Braves and suddenly turned to Zhang Shouji, who was being protected by several guards. It's about time to use the beehives. Zhang Shouji nodded and said nothing. He quickly turned and left, walking down the city wall. Although he was only skilled in city construction, Zhang Shouji had fought with Wang Chong in the War of the Southwest, so he wasn't completely ignorant of military affairs. These people were powerful, and as cavalry, they had brought siege awls and hooks that were rarely seen by cavalry. It was clear that these were no ordinary opponents. But regardless of who they were, they had clearly underestimated Wang Chong's confidence in building a city and his preparations. Buzz! As the hundreds of Uzun White Braves reached the bottom of the wall and were using their hooks to scale it, no one noticed that around 15 meters from the ground, a dense network of holes had appeared on the wall. Within the holes, there were sharp arrows shining with cold light. Boom! Tens of thousands of arrows shot out like a torrent of locusts, engulfing all the Uzun White Braves outside the wall. This sudden assault caught the Uzun White Braves off guard. Ding ding ding, countless arrows rained down on his body, but they were all blocked by his thick armor. However, there were more than tens of thousands of arrows raining down from the city walls, and there was no way to dodge at such a close distance. Pu, the arrows were pierced through the gaps in the dense rain of arrows, piercing through the necks and other areas. Bang, bang, bang. Caught off guard, 30 to 40 White Braves dropped to the ground, their corpses strewn across the ground. The others also had their ropes cut and fell off the city wall. Not only that, but the rest of the Uzun White Braves were also caught in the rain of arrows. Whoosh! 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 In the blink of an eye, 70 to 80 white braves were killed. Damn it! Be careful of the arrow rain, that howls tore through the night sky. This volley of arrows was something none of the white braves had expected. Wang Chang's beehive had been set up perfectly, and there had been no warning at all. In the blink of an eye, more than 100 white braves had been killed or wounded. In a battle where tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of soldiers could be killed or wounded, this number was negligible. But to the white braves, who numbered only 5 or 6,000, this was no small number. Shields. Defense. The white braves' ferocity was on full display. In the face of this volley of arrows, not a single one of them retreated. In the dim light of the flames, the white braves suddenly stooped, their right hands reaching into the bellies of their horses. When they stood up, they were holding thick plates and shields. One shield after another was raised into the air, and in the blink of an eye, they had formed a massive defense beneath the walls of the city of steel. All the arrows struck these shields and were blocked. Everyone, hurry! Open the gates! Attack the city of steel! A white braves commander shouted, and as he spoke, more claws and hooks crossed the 40-some meters to strike the walls. Chapter 733. Boom! Boom! A few moments later, a boom attracted the attention of everyone on the wall. They turned their heads and saw that nearby, a part of the wall had been split open like a piece of paper. Next to the crack, several white braves with particularly powerful auras were crouched in a corner of the wall, constantly pushing the crack in. Metal element martial artists. On the wall, Cheng Sunyuan's pupils constricted, his face paling. Wang Chang's city of steel was incredibly tough, but this was also the greatest problem. Once it encountered a powerful metal element ability user, the formidable city of steel would instantly become like a piece of paper. Someone. Aim there and immediately attack. Cheng Sanyuan quickly called over a group of archers, but as the arrows fell, they were all blocked by the sturdy plate shields. The arrows were even disintegrated in the air before they could hit the ground. There were even a few arrows that were reflected back at the walls by the metal element ability users. No matter how sharp an arrow was, its power was greatly reduced in the face of a metal element ability user. Marquis. Cheng Sunyuan's eyes widened, and he finally couldn't help but look at Wang Chong. The enemy had made far more preparations than he had imagined. If this continued, the Uzun wouldn't even need to open the city gates before they were punching holes in them. As the winds howled, Wang Chong stared motionlessly at the blazing furnace in the distance, as if he had heard nothing. Marquis, Marquis, Cheng Sunyuan's heart thumped, and he couldn't help but call out. Don't worry about it. No matter how many metal element ability users they send, they won't be able to open it, at least not before daybreak. Wang Chang's indifferent voice rang out in his ear. His expression was calm, his eyes still looking forward. It seemed like he had not changed at all. Cheng Sanyuan was stunned. Only now did he realize that although Wang Chong had not said anything, no change on the battlefield could escape his eyes. However, what surprised Cheng Sanyuan the most was what Wang Chong said at the end. The strength of metal-type ability users was well known. Cheng Sanyuan did not understand why Wang Chong was so confident that these people would not be able to break through the city wall. Yes, Marquis. Although he was puzzled, Cheng Sanyuan still endured it. On the other side, Wang Chong was observant. He knew that Cheng Sanyuan was puzzled, but he didn't explain. This city of steel had been constructed from gold. To outsiders, the amount of gold and silver spent on it was unimaginable. If anyone thought that this was just a city made of metal, they would be gravely mistaken. In the bottom layer of steel, Wang Chong had added too many large-scale defensive formations, fortification formations, and even rebound formations. Not only that, but Wang Chong had also added thousands of small formations inside. It was no exaggeration to say that this steel was even more valuable than gold. It was not impossible for metal-type martial artists to break through these walls, but the amount of time, energy, and price they would have to pay would be unimaginable. Just as Wang Chong had said, the enemy would not be able to break through the walls before daybreak, so Wang Chong wasn't worried at all. But right now, Wang Chong was thinking about something else. Something's wrong. Just what are you trying to do? Wang Chong narrowed his eyes as he looked into the distance. Cavalry was used to charge on the battlefield, not to attack a city. Even if they brought siege awls, ropes, and grappling hooks, it would still be the same. Since the enemy had come prepared and had even wrapped the hooves of their warhorses, they should understand that this method would not be able to break through the city gate. The question was, what was the enemy's goal? Or rather, where was the enemy's true target? Wang Chong was hailed as the greatest war saint in the history of the Central Plains. Even illustrious figures like Huishu Wuzong and Daluan Ruozhen had been toyed around in the palm of his hand, let alone anyone else. No strategy could escape his eyes. Wang Chong knew that something was wrong here. Clang clang clang. The first batch of white braves had finally crossed the 40-some meters and scaled the wall, braving the rain of arrows. Rumble. Black war halos vibrated and flickered beneath their feet. Shockwaves exploded, and one of the city guards screamed in agony as he was sent flying in all directions like a kite with its string cut. The White Braves, hailed as the strongest cavalry of the Yuzhen, had finally revealed their powerful cultivation. Each of these White Braves was at Tier 1 or Tier 2 of the profound martial realm. Although the White Braves, trained in the secret arts of the Great Snow Mountain, could not compare to the profound martial realm commanders of the army, their strength was far superior to that of the elites of other armies. The various great clans had sent their best experts to construct the city, but they were no match for these powerful White Braves. Don't panic. Everyone, work together and attack. No. They're too strong. Ah. Screams filled the air as countless experts from the great clans charged forward. But in the face of these White Braves, who were as tall and powerful as profound martial experts, they were sent flying in the blink of an eye. Kaiyil. Kaiyil. Lows and roars resounded over the walls. These White Braves who guarded the Yuzhen capital and at Senpo displayed their overwhelming strength, sending the guards on the walls flying like tigers in a flock of sheep. The fact that not a single one of the White Braves on the walls was a match for them caused everyone on the walls to pale. Just who are these people? They're just ordinary soldiers. How could they be so powerful? Everyone was deeply shocked by what they saw. In this period of time, they had all witnessed the extraordinary strength and training of the city guards. They were able to assemble in an extremely short amount of time. And when they walked, their backs were straight, each of them brimming with vigor. Those craftsmen who had been hiding in the city, believing themselves to be safe, were terrified by this sight. Seeing that the Yuzhen White Braves were about to charge down the walls and open the gates, the only one who could maintain his composure was Wang Chong. It's about time. Wang Chong said to himself as he stood on the walls. His expression was calm and confident. It seemed like there was nothing in the world that could move him, nothing that could surpass his expectations. Rumble. There was a deafening boom as a group of 20 to 30 black-armored warriors strode out from the walls. Their gazes were sharp and their auras were powerful, not one bit inferior to the White Braves. Ready. Attack. At the very front of the group was a middle-aged man of about 30 years of age, who seemed to be the leader. He pulled out a Wuxia steel sword that gleamed with a bone-chilling light. Clang clang clang. The Wuxia steel swords were unsheathed, their sharp tips slanting to the sky. Under the dim starlight, they formed a dense forest of swords. Boom! In the blink of an eye, 20 to 30 fully armored Wuxia steel warriors had formed into a formation and were charging at the White Braves on the walls. As they charged, halos of thorns descended from their bodies, transforming into rings of light beneath their feet that made these Wuxia steel warriors seem even more powerful. Bang! Stellar energy exploded and waves of chi roiled. In the blink of an eye, the two sides were locked in a fierce battle, the sounds of metal clanging and sparks flying in the air. The unstoppable white braves were instantly stopped. Not only that, but they were also on par with them and wielding Wuxia steel swords that could cut through iron like mud. The white braves were completely suppressed. In a flash, all the white braves on the walls paled. "Kill them!" Su Kei's voice resounded over the walls, and as he spoke, the black-armored Wuxia steel warriors on the walls began to combine into a small three-man formation. Clang! The first strike cut off the enemy's left and right arms, while the second cut off their heads. Trembling, one white brave after another collapsed onto the walls. On this trip to the City of Steel, Wang Chong had only brought 20 to 30 profound martial realm elites. Unlike the others, these were experts hand-picked from the army. Wang Chong had used the influence of the King of Song, Zhangqiu Jianxiong, Xianyu Zhongtong, his father Wang Yan, and his grandfather Wang Jiuling in the army to select them. The forces led by Qing Sanyuan and Su Shixian were only the first line of defense. The walls of the City of Steel were the second line of defense, and Su Kei's forces were fully armed. They wore armor forged from meteoric metal and wielded the sharpest Wuxia steel swords, and all of them were at the profound martial realm or above. This was the third line of defense of the City of Steel. The terrain of Wuxiang was complex, and there were many factions around it. It was very difficult to say whether ordinary martial artists would come. If they encountered a sneak attack from an expert, they would need experts of the same level to deal with it. Su Kei's force had been formed for this purpose. Everyone, get ready. As more and more white braves climbed the walls, Qing Sanyuan and Su Shixian's pupils constricted and their bodies tensed up. Clang! With a furious roar, Qing Sanyuan and the others unsheathed their swords. Forming groups of 6 or 7, they formed a simple battle formation and charged at the white braves. Thud thud thud. In the blink of an eye, the two sides were engaged in fierce combat. Although the white braves were individually powerful, they were far inferior to Qing Sanyuan and Su Shixian in terms of teamwork and formations. Squelch! One sword after another pierced through the chink in their armor, stabbing into their flesh. In a flash, one white brave after another fell to the walls, their eyes wide open and their bodies twitching. In a one-on-one battle, none of Wang Chong's soldiers were a match for these white braves, but when they worked together, these white braves simply couldn't stop them. Moreover, the white braves were cavalry. Abandoning their warhorses and climbing the walls meant that they had given up their greatest advantage. Chapter 734. Everyone else, get out of the way. Ready. Fire. At the place where the battle on the walls was the most intense, several black-armored soldiers were kneeling on the ground, their swords drawn and pointing forward. Twang! The bowstring vibrated, and with a heaven-shaking boom, the air was pierced through. A long black arrow instantly crossed the distance of more than 300 zhang, piercing through a white brave who had just climbed up the wall. The enormous force of the arrow lifted him off the ground, over the wall, and into the depths of the night. Ballisti! Careful! On the walls, a tall and muscular white brave paled when he saw the massive machine behind the black-armored soldiers. On the battlefield, ballistae were always the greatest threat to cavalry. No matter how many hardening and defensive arrays the Uzun soldiers had added to their plate armor, they could not stop the nightmare of the battlefield, the ballistae. No one had expected Wang Chong to use these ballistae, which lacked variety and accuracy, on the walls of the walls. Unlike the open battlefield where two armies fought, the walls of the City of Steel were cramped and didn't have enough room to maneuver. Moreover, the 30-some zhang distance made it very difficult for the white braves to dodge the ballistae. Dodge! Careful! The white braves were all stunned. Although Wang Chong had only placed 4 ballistae on the walls, they were far more intimidating than any number of soldiers could ever hope to match. Being hit by a ballista meant certain death. All the white braves felt apprehensive and immediately felt their hands and feet bound, unable to move at all. Roar! Let me! I'll go kill them! A white brave roared in Uzun, his expression savage. He unsheathed his scimitar and leapt into the air, attempting to quickly change his trajectory and kill the black-armored soldiers while simultaneously destroying the ballistae. But this white brave elite had only moved a few dozen feet when a pitch-black ballista bolt pierced through his chest and sent his corpse crashing into the city wall nearly 100 jong away. Next. Ready, the commander commanding the 4 ballistae had a steely expression, his face as calm as ever. After killing the white braves, he immediately reloaded the ballistae, adjusted the direction, and began a second volley. These soldiers operating the ballistae seemed ordinary, but they were actually elites that Wang Chong had selected from the Annan Protectorate. At the same time, Wang Chong was conducting a new round of ballistae experiments. The greatest flaw of a ballista was that it was straightforward and lacked variation, making it easy for an opponent to dodge. Moreover, the cost of producing a ballista bolt was extremely high, so Wang Chong decided to try something new. He would select soldiers with exceptional talent in operating ballistae and form squads to make up for the poor accuracy of the ballistae. At the same time, this outstanding ballista team would be able to maximize the power of the ballistae. From the looks of it, Wang Chong's experiment was clearly effective. But the only problem was that ballistae were weapons of war controlled by the imperial court. Wang Chong could make ballistae bolts in large quantities, but he could not casually make ballistae. Even these 4 ballistae had been something that Wang Chong had applied for through the King of Song's influence in the imperial court. Bang! Boom after boom resounded through the city of steel, echoing far into the night. Although only 4 ballistae had been transferred from the walls, under the control of the ballista teams, they were able to fire extremely quickly. The firing speed of these 4 ballistae was equivalent to 30 or 40 ballistae. The white braves on the walls were almost completely suppressed by the ballistae. Some of the white braves tried to use other soldiers as cover, but it was clear that they had underestimated the accuracy of these 4 ballista teams. Once the ballistae were calibrated, it didn't matter how they tried to hide, as long as they revealed the slightest opening, they would be hit. The appearance of these 4 ballistae instantly changed the course of the battle on the walls. Wonderful! I knew that Marquis would have a way. No wonder Marquis didn't move. He predicted this all along. Ha ha ha, Marquis's foresight is divine. Not even the Uzun and Mengshi Zhao are a match for him, so how could these enemies stop him? Ha ha, who was it just now that was trembling in fear? Within the walls, the 100,000 craftsmen had been silently watching the battle, and upon seeing this sight, they immediately calmed down. In this city of steel, Wang Chong was the greatest stabilizing force. Although they had been somewhat dissatisfied at the start with Wang Chong standing there motionlessly, they no longer had any doubts. In the distance, in the flickering light of the flames, Wang Chong stood with his back to the crowd, his robes flapping in the wind. At this moment, Wang Chong's back had become tall and imposing, like a heavy mountain range. A strategist can decide victory from 1,000 li away. Whether it's the southwest or the northwest, no matter what, as long as he wants to do it, nothing will ever escape his grasp. It's no wonder so many great clans of the capital want to form a relationship with him. Whether it's money or manpower, they're all willing to work for him. Because if we follow him, there's nothing we can't achieve. In the middle of the bustling city, in another place not far from the middle of the walls, no one noticed that Zhang Shoji was silently watching Wang Chong's back, his mind filled with emotion. Of all the craftsmen, he had been the first to follow Wang Chong, and he had followed him through life and death. Zhang Shoji had a rather good understanding of Wang Chong. However, the more he understood Wang Chong, the more sincere and respectful Zhang Shoji felt toward this youth of 16 or 17. The intelligence and decisiveness he displayed far exceeded his age. The more he interacted with him, the more he trusted him, and the more he wanted to follow and help him. On the walls, Wang Chong had no idea what the others were thinking. His thoughts on strategy far surpassed the battle before him. It's about time. Just where, Wang Chang's mind was in turmoil. No matter how formidable the white braves were, using them to besiege a city was putting the cart before the horse. No matter how formidable they weren't enough to pose a true threat to Wang Chong. He was considering other things. Did I overestimate you? To think of using cloth to wrap a horse's hooves and a battering ram from the Great Snow Mountain Temple, you shouldn't be an ordinary opponent. Just what are you trying to do? Wang Chong frowned in thought. He was beginning to sense that something was wrong. Cling cling clang. With a metallic clatter, Wang Chong focused his eyes and saw hooks fly up from the walls and land in front of Wang Chong. In just a few moments, crimson-white braves had climbed up the walls. Seeing Wang Chong standing in front of them, these white braves immediately unsheathed their scimitars and furiously slashed at Wang Chong. Humph, you overestimate yourself. Wang Chong returned to his senses and sneered. Each of the white braves was an expert of the profound martial realm, and they were armed to the teeth with formidable defensive power. But even if they could fight against the valiant Mamelukes, they were like mantises trying to stop a chariot in front of him. Facing 7 or 8 crimson-eyed white braves wielding scimitars, Wang Chong didn't even move, allowing them to slash at him. Boom! 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 One white brave after another gripped their scimitars and slashed at Wang Chong with thunderous momentum. With the strength of these Uzun white braves, this full-strength slash could even cleave apart a mountain. But when they reached Wang Chong, when they were still several dozen feet away, it was like they had struck an invisible wall and were frozen in the air. What's going on? What evil art did this fellow use? Why can't I move my scimitar? Drawl, everyone, work together to kill him. He can't possibly deal with so many of us. The Uzun white braves were both shocked and infuriated. This was completely out of their expectations. Of all the battles they had participated in, this was the first time they had encountered such a situation. But what made them panic the most was the calm and indifferent voice they heard next. Is that so? These words were not spoken in the Han language, but in the Uzun language they were so familiar with. It's that Han. All the Uzun white braves stared in shock at Wang Chong. When Wang Chong raised his head and looked at them, all of them had a bad feeling. Run! Run! Someone suddenly shouted, but in the blink of an eye, all of them felt an intense sense of danger, their scalps going numb. Driven by their instincts, they wanted to abandon their scimitars and flee, but it was too late. Rumble. Wang Chong blinked his eyes, and in a flash of cold light, all the surrounding white braves were pulled toward Wang Chong by a powerful force. Careful! My stellar energy! He's absorbing our energy. Evil art! He knows evil arts. Ah! The most elite white braves of the Uzun Plateau were shocked, their eyes brimming with the deepest fear. In front of the great yin-yang heaven creation art, these white braves were all stiff and unable to move. The stellar energy in their bodies flowed like water from a broken dam, surging into Wang Chong's body. Not only that, even their incomparably tough armor, inscribed with countless defensive and hardened arrays, was constantly twisting, shrinking, collapsing, and deforming in front of Wang Chong's great yin-yang heaven creation art. Ah! With one final scream, the 8 Uzun white braves were compressed into a ball of flesh and blood, their armor crumbling to the ground around Wang Chong. Chapter 735. Seeking Your Own Death. Without even glancing at them, Wang Chong quickly regained his composure. At his current level of strength, not even ordinary Saint martial experts were a match for him. If he had the chance, he could suck them dry of their energy, let alone these profound martial white braves. Wang Chong didn't even need to do anything for these white braves to die around him. With a wave of Wang Chong's sleeve, the corpses of the 8 white braves flew into the air, over the walls, and down below. Boom! Just when Wang Chong was turning his attention elsewhere, the situation suddenly changed. A massive boom came from within the city of steel, followed by screams. Ah! Not good. There's a spy. It's someone from Uzan. Save me. Save me. My leg. Run, run. The tranquil city was suddenly thrown into chaos. Screams, explosions, pleas, collisions, and shockwaves filled the air. In an instant, the atmosphere in the Battle of Steel suddenly changed. The situation that had been under control suddenly tensed up, and countless variables appeared. This is impossible. On the walls, the countless Tang dynasty soldiers trembled in fear as they stared in shock at the source of the screams. And Wang Chong suddenly turned around. For a moment, the entire top of the city wall was silent, deathly silent. Even the black-armored soldiers controlling the ballistae couldn't help but turn around in shock. In the entire Wuxiang region, the city of steel was the most heavily guarded, and the inner city was the most heavily guarded. All the craftsmen involved in the construction of the city were Han, and No who were recruited. Moreover, their backgrounds had all been recorded in the Bureau of Revenue. This was done through the descendants of the great clans who held official positions in the Bureau of Revenue. Moreover, all the craftsmen were managed by foremen, and above the foremen were foremen, and above the foremen were foremen. Layer by layer, it was impossible for an outsider to step in. And outside the city of steel, there were several thousand cavalry in guard standing guard, all of them on guard from 10 li away. It could be said that in the entire western regions, although Wangchang's city of steel had many people, it was the most difficult place to sneak into. Moreover, the Uzan looked completely different from the Han. Even the white braves, who were relatively tall among the Uzan, looked very different from the Han. Just the redness of the plateau on their faces was not so easy to get rid of. This wasn't something that could be impersonated just by having an average height. No one knew how these Uzan people managed to sneak in. Over there. At this moment, the calmest person was none other than Wang Chong. After his initial surprise, Wang Chong seemed to have found the answer to all his questions, and he suddenly understood. From the very start, Wang Chong had never been able to understand a single question. Why were these people so confident that they could break the city of steel? Were they relying on these battering rams and 5-clawed hooks? Attacking and defending a city was completely different from fighting in the field, and there was no meaning in their actions. Only when he heard the screams from within the city did Wang Chong suddenly understand. The opponent this time was far more difficult to deal with than he had imagined, and far more frightening. Although he didn't know how the opponent had done it, there was no doubt that they had bypassed the layers of checks and had even managed to overcome the difference in appearance to infiltrate the city of steel. These spies hidden within the city were the true trump cards of the opponent. I really want to know more and more just who are the attackers this time. Wang Chong quietly said to himself, a cold and harsh light flashing through his eyes. He had encountered quite a few famous Uzan generals, whether it was Tumi Sangza, Long Kinba, or Jiao Sero, or the higher-ranking generals like Huishu Wuzong and Daluan Ruozan. He knew the style of these Uzan generals like the back of his hand. But this Uzan general's style was completely different. Whether it was the hooves, feints, plate armor, shields, metal element martial artists, 5-clawed hooks, battering rams, or the spies within the city, or how to use the darkness to evade the surveillance of the eagles, his style was completely different from any other Uzan general that Wang Chong had encountered. This style was completely different from the straightforward Uzan people, and he was even more cunning than a well-read general of the Central Plains. Not even the fox of the battlefield, Yao Guangyi, could compare to him. In Wang Chong's memories, there were very few Uzan generals who were as difficult to deal with as this one. But the urgent task at hand was to resolve the chaos in the city. Otherwise, with so many of the craftsmen in the city powerless to resist, they would be massacred, and the gates of the city of steel might really be breached. Buzz! With no time to think, Wang Chong flew off the walls. But the moment Wang Chong flew off, he felt a strange sensation coming from behind him. At first it was just a feeling of wheat, but in the blink of an eye, this feeling of wheat rapidly expanded, ultimately becoming as intense as a storm. He, I've caught you," a faint sneer came from the side of his ear, like the teasing of the grim reaper. Although he couldn't see anything, Wang Chong felt an intense sense of danger. "Not good." Wang Chong grimaced. His opponent had been hiding here for some time, restraining his aura and lying in wait like a viper. Only when Wang Chong had been drawn away by the disturbance in the distance and revealed an opening did he suddenly strike. And his first move had been a fatal one. From his reincarnation until now, this could be said to be the most sinister, most vicious, and most fatal opponent Wang Chong had ever encountered. Bang! With no time to think, a massive wave of stellar energy erupted from Wang Chong's body. Wang Chong pushed the great yin-yang heaven creation art to its limit. One yin and one yang, one sun and one moon, two phantoms appeared on Wang Chong's left and right shoulders. Boom! A sharp and destructive bolt of energy swept through Wang Chong's original position like an arrow, traveling several hundred zhang. The majestic energy stirred the air, stirring up a fierce gale in a radius of 100 zhang around the city gate. The strong astral winds crashed against the city gate, causing the steel gate to emit rumbling sounds, causing people to tremble in fear. On the other side, after Wang Chong had dodged this attack by a hair, he turned his head in shock to see this scene. "Kid! Your reaction isn't bad. You actually managed to dodge this attack." Not far from Wang Chong's original position, a tall, muscular, and wild black silhouette stood there like a god, his right hand gripping a red-black spear that was more than 1 zhang long and as thick as a child's arm. His gaze was cold and aloof, brimming with disdain. It was as if there was nothing in this world that was worthy of his attention, and nothing that could compare to him. But the most frightening thing was the wild, brutal, and murderous aura he exuded. It was as if his existence was to destroy everything in the world. Wang Chong had seen his fair share of experts, but he had never seen such a savage, terrifying, and crazed expert brimming with the desire to kill and destroy. "Who is this person?" Wang Chong's expression was solemn as he looked at the crazy man in front of him. This person's craftiness, treachery, resourcefulness in the art of war, wisdom, forbearance, concealment, and the strong murderous aura that had been cultivated from mountains of corpses and seas of blood had completely overturned Wang Chong's traditional impression of Uzun's generals and experts. It was enough to leave a deep impression on anyone who saw this person, and they would never be able to forget it. A powerful enemy. An absolutely powerful enemy. Wang Chong knew that he had probably encountered an extremely terrifying opponent in the northwest this time. But this powerful enemy, Wang Chong, had no impression of him at all. Something was wrong. As his eyes flitted over the strange dark red spear in the man's right hand that seemed capable of piercing the heavens, Wang Chong's eyes widened as he suddenly thought of a certain person. The Northwest was a complicated place. The Uzun, the Tang dynasty, the Western Turks, the kingdoms of the western regions, the Abbasid Caliphate, Karak-Spa-Zinu, Sindhu, all these factions intersected, and fierce battles broke out every month. Although it wasn't too difficult to determine a person based on their murderous aura, it wasn't too easy either. But if this person was also wielding a dark red demonic spear that was rarely used in the western regions, then determining this person's identity wouldn't be too difficult. At the very least, Wang Chong quickly thought of a person. "It's him." Wang Chong's eyes widened, and his expression turned extremely grave. Murderous, cunning, difficult to deal with, skilled in the art of war, a member of the Uzun, a dark red spear. When all this information was put together, the name of a certain person leapt to the surface of Wang Chong's mind. Dian Mangpoj. He was a brigadier general of the Uzun Empire and a famous great general in the later years of the Uzun Empire. His reputation had once surpassed that of traditional Uzun great generals like Dusong Mangpoj and Huishu Wuzong, and he had even surpassed the king of Uzun great generals, Huitadra Konglo. He was hailed as the successor to Huitadra Konglo. This person had once been the greatest threat to the late Tang, because he was crazy, dangerous, and bloodthirsty, but he was also extremely intelligent. Most importantly, his thinking was so erratic that it was impossible to judge him with normal logic. His bloodthirst and madness made it so that he would do things that normal people would not do, regardless of the cost. And it was also because he was extremely intelligent that every time he attacked, he would cause enormous trouble, threat, and harm to his opponents. He had fought the Turks, he had fought the Arabs, he had fought Karak-Spazinu, he had fought Sindhu, he had fought the Tang dynasty. The list of countries he had attacked was very, very long. Sometimes, he would even cross a country to attack another. In the later years of the Northwest, if not for the otherworldly invaders, this Dayan Mangpoj would have been the person that all sides wanted to eliminate the most. But this was not the only reason that Wang Chong had an impression of him. It was because Wang Chong clearly remembered that Dayan Mangpoj had been one of the two pivotal figures in the Qixi Protectorate's lack of soldiers. And the white braves that Uzun was renowned for were precisely one of the armies under his command. Chapter 736. So it's him. Wang Chong clenched his fists, his heart exploding with killing intent. Whether it was for the Tang dynasty or the 30,000 elite soldiers of the Anxi Protectorate army, this person was someone he had to eliminate. Bzzz. At this moment, a familiar voice rang out in his mind. Wang Chong was stunned by this voice. He had not expected the Stone of Destiny to issue a mission targeting Dayan Mangpoj. Moreover, unlike the missions of the past, this mission would not result in certain death, but failure would result in a penalty of destiny energy. Moreover, failure would result in a penalty of 5 times the amount of destiny energy awarded. In other words, the Stone of Destiny was using this method of reward and punishment to force him to complete the mission, and the time limit for the mission was only 3 months. No matter how long it takes, no matter how many points of destiny energy are deducted, it doesn't matter, because I will personally kill him. As these thoughts flashed through his mind, Wang Chong's right hand gripped the sword at his waist and clang. He unsheathed the Wuxia steel sword. At that moment, a cold and dazzling light shrouded the air like thousands of stars. Wang Chong straightened his body, his eyes locked onto the nearby Dayan Mangpoj, and he exploded with a will to fight. The white braves outside the city were no longer important. As long as he killed Dayan Mangpoj, this battle would end. Ha ha ha, interesting. How dare you challenge me? Suddenly, brash laughter resounded through the city of steel. In the darkness, Dayan Mangpoj's eyes revealed a strange light as he examined the sword in Wang Chong's hand. He held a dark red spear in his hand and his long hair fluttered in the wind. In the darkness, he was like the most terrifying demon god. You've completely piqued my interest. Originally, I was only following the Tsenpo's orders to finish you off. But now, I've changed my mind. Even without the Tsenpo's orders, I must kill you. Ha ha ha, interesting prey, don't disappoint me. The corner of Dayan Mangpoj's mouth slowly curled up, suddenly revealing a cruel smile. At this moment, near the city wall, everyone who saw this scene could not help but feel a deep chill in their hearts. However, before anyone could react, Dayan Mangpoj leaped and launched an attack. Boom! With a heaven-shaking boom, the dark red spear in Dayan Mangpoj's hand shot out like a carp leaping through the waves, reaching Wang Chong in a single thrust. The earth cracked and the sky collapsed, the winds howled, and the city wall creaked as if it could not endure the power of this spear and would collapse at any moment. In a radius of 20-some zhang from where Dayan Mangpoj's spear had struck, all the stairs, railings, wooden planks, steel, and even the suspension tower had been twisted into a twisted dough twist. Countless fragments shot out like a torrent of pear blossoms. But while Dayan Mangpoj was fast, Wang Chong was even faster. The moment Dayan Mangpoj attacked, Wang Chong's figure blurred and he soared into the sky like a sparrow hawk, dodging Dayan Mangpoj's attack by a hair's breadth. But when Dayan Mangpoj sensed this scene, his eyes narrowed. With his back to Wang Chong, he did not even think as he thrust the dark red spear in his hand backwards. Boom! Shockwaves surged. Wherever the tip of Dian Mengpo's spear struck, all the shockwaves were expelled, creating a vacuum. That tyrannical spear could even twist steel into a fried dough twist, let alone a human's body of flesh and blood. Clang! The Wuxia steel sword in Wang Chong's hand seemed slow and then fast as it slammed into the tip of Dian Mengpo's spear. The clash of spear and sword caused an explosion of energy. Several dozen meters away, the 10-meter-tall suspension tower and the wooden crates on the ground were all blown away by the shockwaves. Nearby, all the soldiers within range of the battle, including the white braves who had just climbed onto the walls, were blown off the ground by the fierce shockwaves of the battle. They tumbled through the air like withered grass and crashed into the outer wall of the steel fortress. But Wang Chong's reaction was much better. In a flash of light, Wang Chong was sent flying like a kite with its string cut. But after flying for several zhang, all the force of the impact dissipated. Wang Chong somersaulted in the air, and like a leaf, he gently floated down to another section of the wall 10 some zhang away. From the way he had landed, Wang Chong had come out unscathed from this exchange. What sort of martial art is this? Dian Mengpo had wanted to pursue, but upon seeing this sight, his pupils constricted and he stopped. In that exchange just now, he had clearly sensed that this youngest son of the Wang clan of the Tang dynasty was not as strong as him. But for some reason, when the two of them fought, more than half of the energy that she released was dissipated by him using some unknown method. Wang Chong did not answer. He stood on one of the ramparts, his face emotionless. In that exchange, he had basically gotten a grasp of Dian Mengpo's level of strength. As the most outstanding general of the Uzun in the future, Dian Mengpo's internal energy was tyrannical and fierce, brimming with the purest destructive energy. But compared to his achievements in his future life, the current Dian Mengpo was far from being as terrifying. Brigadier General level. This was Dian Mengpo's current level of strength. He was not as strong as traditional Uzun great generals like Huishu Wuzong or Dusong Mengpo, but he was not too far off. This seemingly casual thrust of his spear had its aura completely restrained, and only in the moment of the clash did it explode. There was no question that Dian Mengban had reached the pinnacle in terms of control over his strength. In the past, Wang Chong would have been doomed if he had encountered Dian Mengpo, but after receiving the great Yin-Yang heaven creation art from his master, the evil emperor, as long as he did not encounter Dusong Mengpo or any other Uzun great general, Wang Chong could fight against any other expert, including a brigadier general like Dian Mengpo. Dian Mengpo? Wang Chong said. Dian Mengpo paused, his pupils constricting in surprise, but he quickly smiled. Interesting. You actually know my name. This operation was suddenly getting more and more interesting. This prey had probably never come to the northwest before, but he had been able to recognize him at a glance. This was a rather interesting feeling for Dian Mengpo. Then there's no mistake. Wang Chong nodded in confirmation. Dian Mengpo, it seems like your Uzun will never learn your lesson. Last time, you coveted the southwest, so I sent people to the plateau to spread a few rumors to teach you a small lesson. I didn't think that you would be so stupid as to provoke me again. Did you know? Because of your operation tonight, the Uzun faction will completely withdraw from the western regions, and as a light punishment, the armies of the Tang dynasty will set foot on the edge of the Uzun plateau. That place will become the new territory of the Tang dynasty. This is the price for your operation tonight. Wang Chong said indifferently. His voice was neither loud nor soft, but it had a convincing power. Buzz. With just one sentence, Dian Mengpo's expression instantly changed. If anyone else had said this in front of him, Dian Mengpo would have snorted disdainfully. But only Wang Chong. Not just the western regions, but the entire world and all the countries did not dare to take his threat lightly. Although he was only a teenager, this youth's wisdom was forged from the bones of hundreds of thousands and the blood of countless soldiers. This was much more powerful than any heroic words or self-boasting. Although Dian Mangpoj did not think much of this youngest son of the Wang family of the Tang dynasty, it was only in terms of martial arts. In terms of the art of war, a man who could defeat Wuxia Wuzong and Daluan Ruozhen, even Dian Mangpoj did not dare to underestimate him. No matter what you say, we'll talk about it if you survive. Soon, the corners of Dian Mangpoj's mouth curled up slightly, revealing a cruel and playful smile. No matter what Wang Chong threatened, that was a matter for the future. But tonight, he must die. Boom! As soon as Dian Mangpoj's voice fell, the void trembled, and the sound of steel roared. Martial arts halos in the shape of thorns fell from his body and fell to the ground. They turned into halos and surrounded the surroundings. Different from other halos, the halos released by Dian Mangpoj were not black or white, but a pale gold color. If one looked closely, one could vaguely see a golden crown in the pale gold halos. Set off by these halos, Dian Mangpoj's originally murderous aura was like that of a demon god from hell. But at this moment, there was an additional sacred and vast feeling, like an Azura god of war. King's Halo. Seeing this golden halo, Wang Chong's expression changed slightly. When a Saint Martial Realm expert's cultivation reached a certain level, coupled with the high level of martial arts they practiced, the halo outside their body would show various signs that were different from other halos. The first was that the color of the halo outside their body would deepen, turning into a sacred and vast gold color, and the pattern of a crown would appear in the halo. This was the symbol that a Saint Martial Realm expert was the King of Warriors. Chapter 737. Ma. Me. And I. Dian Mangban pushed his energy to the limit and began to recite the mantra. Each of these 4 words was imbued with boundless profundity and power, and with each word, Dian Mangban's aura swelled a notch. Behind him, light and shadow intertwined as a golden crown suddenly rose from the ring of light. It rapidly expanded and transformed, finally transforming into the illusion of a golden great snow mountain. But in just an instant, black smoke billowed. Aside from the white peak of the enormous great snow mountain illusion, the rest of the area was as black as ink. Roar! An angry roar rang out. Under the gazes of countless pairs of eyes, a lifelike and savage black destruction dragon suddenly burst out from behind Dian Mangpoj. Black Dragon burst. With a shout, Dian Mangpoj suddenly shot into the air, becoming one with the dragon as he shot toward Wang Chong. Roar! With a heaven-shaking roar, a black dragon python separated from Dian Mangpoj's body, followed by a second, a third, a fourth, a total of 9 savage black dragons shot out, covering the sky and earth as they charged toward Wang Chong, who was standing motionlessly on the railing. Great Snow Mountain Devil Dragon Art. Wang Chong's eyes flashed. He raised his head and looked at the 9 black dragons shooting down from the sky. He instantly recognized the Great Snow Mountain technique that Dian Mangpoj had used. The Uzun's Great Snow Mountain Temple was renowned throughout the world. It was the origin of all of the Uzun's martial arts. On the battlefield, the techniques of all of the Uzun generals were inextricably linked to the Great Snow Mountain Temple. They might have originated from a branch of some of the Great Snow Mountain Temple's techniques, or they might have originated directly from the Great Snow Mountain Temple. Within the Great Snow Mountain Temple, there were a few techniques that were especially famous. The Great Snow Mountain Devil Dragon Art was one of them. In the legends of the Uzun, a black demon dragon had once broken out of the ground and wreaked havoc on the plateau. It devoured countless cows and sheep, killed countless herdsmen, and the warriors of the plateau. All of the experts of the plateau were no match for it. Corpses were piled up everywhere, until this black demon dragon charged up the Great Snow Mountain Temple and encountered the holy monks of the Great Snow Mountain Temple. In the end, it was suppressed beneath the Great Snow Mountain. The Great Snow Mountain Devil Dragon art was created based on this ancient legend that everyone on the Uzan Plateau knew of. In his last life, Wang Chong had long heard of the might of this Great Snow Mountain Devil Dragon art. But because this supreme technique of the Great Snow Mountain Temple was extremely murderous, very few people cultivated it, and so he had never had the chance to see it. Wang Chong had not expected that Dian Mangpoch would use this supreme technique of the Great Snow Mountain. Boom! The 9 black dragons rammed down one after another. The railing that Wang Chong was standing on was instantly turned into a pile of scrap metal. Meanwhile, Wang Chong had already soared into the sky, flying away. He pushed the great yin-yang heaven creation art to its limit. A sun and a moon, one gold and one silver, 2 illusions appeared on his shoulders. Wang Chong's stellar energy was also pushed to the limit. The roiling stellar energy was like thousands of dragons, shuttling back and forth around his body, roaring and roaring. Boom! Wang Chong only moved slightly, once again dodging Dian Mangpoch's second attack. Come! A cold light flashed in Wang Chong's eyes, and he flicked the index and middle fingers of his right hand. In a flash, a milky white energy even more dazzling than the sun shot out, shooting 3 inches below Dian Mangpoch's armpit. Upon seeing this sword chi, Dian Mangpoch finally grimaced. This sword chi gave him an extremely sharp feeling, not the slightest bit inferior to any divine weapon. Bang! Wang Chong's attack was dodged by Dian Mangpoch, and the sword chi pierced through the metal railing, leaving a large hole in it. In the air, Dian Mangban's eyes widened at this sight. It was common knowledge that amongst all martial artists, metal element ability users were the most difficult to deal with. Among all the metal type ability users, the swordsman ability users were the most terrifying. Wang Chong was only at the Imperial Martial Realm, but the sword chi in his finger was infinitely close to the Saint Martial Realm. Even an expert of his level would pose a threat. Just how many more secrets does this kid have? At this moment, Dian Mangpoch finally put away all the contempt in his heart. If I don't get rid of this kid, he will definitely become a thorn in my side in the Uzan. At this moment, Dian Mangpoch recalled the words Daluan Ruozan had said before he was imprisoned on the plateau, and he suddenly understood. However, the stronger Wang Chong was and the more martial arts he knew, the greater the killing intent in Dian Mangpoch's heart. Boom! Dian Mangpoch held the dark red spear in his right hand and the Great Snow Mountain Demonic Dragon incantation in his left hand. He pushed his movement technique to the limit, instantly transforming into a storm that swept toward Wang Chong. Boom, boom, boom. In a short period of time, Dian Mangpoch's dark red spear stabbed out more than 10 times, and each strike had the power to shatter mountains. At the same time, the Great Snow Mountain Demonic Dragon incantation in his right hand transformed into countless black dragons that attacked Wang Chong from all directions as if they had a life of their own. On the other side, Wang Chong was uncharacteristically locked in a fierce battle with Dian Mangpoch. Boom boom boom. With Wang Chong's imperial martial cultivation, no one could have imagined the result of his direct clash with Dian Mangpoch. At least 40% of Dian Mangpoch's stellar energy, tyrannical and destructive, had been dissolved by Wang Chong using the power of the great yin-yang heaven creation art. But that wasn't all. In Wang Chong's hands, the great yin-yang heaven creation art became unpredictable. With its terrifying attractive force, it could not only guide and change the direction of his opponent's attacks, but also change his own direction and speed. The most obvious was that when Wang Chong soared into the air, he could freely change his direction and speed, completely unaffected by inertia and gravity. This made it impossible for a brigadier general like Dian Mangpoch, a top-class expert of the Great Snow Mountain Temple, to determine where he was moving or where he was. In front of Wang Chong, all sense of judgment had lost its effect. 70% of Dian Mangpoch's attacks missed, Wang Chong dodging them all. Boom! 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 In a fierce gale, Wang Chong used the art of god and demon obliteration in his left hand and the Wuxia steel sword in his right to use the great yin-yang heaven creation art to engage in a fierce battle with Dian Mangpoche. Dian Mangpoche was publicly acknowledged as a top-class expert of the Yuzhen Plateau, second only to imperial great generals like Dusong Mangpoche and Huishu Wuzang. He was incredibly experienced, but Wang Chong was even more experienced than him. Bang! Wang Chong's palm slammed into the black stellar energy barrier around Dian Mangpoche. Dian Mangpoche didn't care at first, but a moment later, he was alarmed as a sharp and pure palm energy pierced through the barrier and toward Dian Mangpoche's heart. Damn it! Dian Mangpoche was given a fright. Even though he had a composed temperament that would not easily reveal it, he still felt his hair stand on end. His stellar energy barrier had not been broken, but Wang Chong's palm energy had been able to break through and strike his body. This was simply inexplicable and inconceivable. Even someone of Dian Mangpoche's breadth of experience had never encountered such a thing before. With no time to think, Dian Mangban raised his right hand and used the dark red spear in his hand to scatter Wang Chong's palm energy. Kid, just where did you learn this martial art? Dian Mangpoche was never one to ask such useless questions, but at this moment, he truly could not restrain himself. The Great Snow Mountain Temple had a long history, and all kinds of secret martial arts manuals were as numerous as the sea. But even if it was the Great Snow Mountain Temple, Dian Mangpoche was certain that there would not be such a strange and inexplicable martial art. I'll tell you when you can hold on. Wang Chong's body was like a phantom, and his sword energy crisscrossed. He moved around in the void, changing constantly, making it impossible for others to capture his real body. Stellar energy penetration was an ability that Wang Chong had obtained from the Stone of Destiny. It was not very powerful, but it was especially effective against experts like Dian Mangpoche, who were at a higher realm than him. Wang Chong had already raised this stellar energy penetration to the maximum. Courting death. Hearing Wang Chong's words, Dian Mangpoche flew into a rage. Do you really think I can't do anything to you? Devil Dragon Slash. Roar. A heaven-shaking dragon roar resounded over the city of steel as black smoke roiled through the air. As countless people watched, Dian Mangban suddenly vanished, and in the midst of the roiling black smoke, a massive black demon dragon appeared. Boom! The moment it appeared, the massive demon dragon twisted in the air and shot toward Wang Chong, its speed 10 times greater than before. The power of this attack was completely different from any of the previous attacks. Not only was it extremely fast, like a bolt of lightning, making it impossible to dodge, but the area covered by the attack was also extremely large. At this moment, even Wang Chong couldn't help but widen his eyes as he felt an intense sense of danger. Leaping Dragon Art. Without the slightest hesitation, Wang Chong instantly used a supreme technique that very few people in this world knew. Boom! As thousands of people watched, black smoke roiled through the air as Dian Mangpoche transformed into a black dragon and crashed into the sturdy walls of the city of steel like a comet. At that moment, the winds howled and the metal clattered, the sound almost tearing apart everyone's eardrums. For a moment, everyone couldn't help but feel as if the black dragon had completely torn apart that section of the city of steel. But in the end, the city of steel had managed to block it. Not only that, everyone could clearly see a tiny black silhouette soar out of the black smoke like a hawk, barely dodging Dian Mangpoche's fatal strike. Leaping Dragon Art. As Wang Chong used it, it spiraled into the air like a dragon. This was not a particularly profound martial art for the current Wang Chong, but in Wang Chong's hands, the power it displayed was far beyond imagination, perfectly dodging Dian Mangpoche's powerful Devil Dragon Slash. Chapter 738. Buzz. As the black smoke settled, Dian Mangpoche appeared on the walls. Wielding his dark red spear, he raised his head and looked up at Wang Chong, his eyes gleaming with cold light. Where do you think you're going? Dian Mangpoche stomped on the ground, his spear transforming into a demonic dragon as it pursued Wang Chong with astonishing speed. There was nowhere to borrow strength from in the air, and it was not as nimble as on the ground. Dian Mangpoj would never let such a target go. However, Dian Mangpoj had still far underestimated Wang Chong's ability to adapt. Buzz! His right hand grasped at the distant walls, and with nothing to rely on, Wang Chong changed his original direction of descent, blinking away to appear on the walls. Sanyuan, Shixian, send some soldiers to clear out the white braves in the city. Focus on guarding the gates. In addition, Su Kui, Guan Yu, Chen Bin. Death's Scythe. Wang Chong proudly stood on the walls, his eyes locked onto Dian Mangpoj, a cold light in them. The devil dragon art of the Great Snow Mountain, the cultivation of a Saint Martial Brigadier General, his tyrannical stellar energy, and his extraordinary fighting skills and experience made Dian Mangpoj the most troublesome and formidable foe Wang Chong had encountered since his reincarnation. If he wanted to detain him and kill this great foe of the Qixi Protectorate, his imperial martial cultivation was far from enough. He had to borrow the strength of others. Yes, my lord. Shouts came from all over the walls, and in the blink of an eye, Cheng Sanyuan, Cheng Shixian, Su Kui, Chen Bin, Guan Yu, all the officers of the City of Steel gathered behind Wang Chong, forming a formation. Sickle of the Grim Reaper. This was a small-scale joint attack formation unique to Wang Chong that could be used to challenge a single top-notch expert. Back then, Su Shiping, Su Wanduan, and the others had only used it together. However, in Wang Chong's hands, the Grim Reaper's scythe revealed its true power. As the top experts of the army gathered behind Wang Chong from all over the city wall, Wang Chong's aura continued to rise. 14, 15, 16, the number of experts behind Wang Chong quickly doubled, and it was still increasing. In the blink of an eye, it had broken through to 20, and it was still increasing. When the number of experts behind Wang Chong increased to 32, buzz. In a flash of light, the air twisted. 32 people, including Wang Chong, formed into the Grim Reaper's scythe, lined up on the wall, their gazes locked onto Dian Mangpoj. The auras of the 33 people fused into one, their stellar energy linked together, and then something strange happened. Roar! A hoarse voice brimming with the aura of death suddenly resounded through the air. In the sky above Wang Chong's group, a massive scythe, more than 3 zhang long and incomparably sharp, appeared in the air. Behind the scythe-shaped weapon, there was a twisted black shadow that was the size of several adults. Bang! In the sky, Dian Mangpoj extended his feet and landed on the opposite wall. When he saw the illusion above Wang Chong's group, he couldn't help but grimace. He had some understanding of the martial arts of the Central Plains, because Uzun had constantly sent people to spy on them. But the formation Wang Chong and the others had used still surprised Dian Mangpoj. Simply put, Dian Mangpoj had never seen such a formation before. But Dian Mangpoj could sense that this formation was extremely powerful. At the very least, it wasn't the kind of formation that could be taken lightly. Dian Mangpoj, now we can have a good fight. The sky was dusky and the flames flickered, coming from the furnaces outside the wall. Standing on the wall, Wang Chong finally smiled. There had been a huge gap between him and Dian Mangpoj, so he had been hindered in battle. But after activating the Scythe of the Death God, his aura suddenly changed. With the help of the 32 generals, he rose from the 6th tier of the Imperial Martial Realm to the peak of the 9th tier of the Imperial Martial Realm. Although he still hadn't reached the Saint Martial Realm, this was enough for Wang Chong to challenge a brigadier general like Dian Mangpoj. Bang! With a stomp of his foot, Wang Chong soared into the sky. This time, he was the first to attack. Go! Behind him, Cheng Sanyuan, Su Shixian, Su Kui, and the others shot forward at the same time, closely following Wang Chong and launching attacks. The greatest benefit of a joint attack formation was that it allowed everyone's strength to fuse together. Thus, it wasn't just Wang Chong who had gotten stronger. Even Qing Sanyuan, Su Shixian, and the other commanders had gotten stronger. Impudent. Do you really think that calling a few more people will work? Dian Mangpoj was infuriated by this sight. For a mighty saint martial expert to be provoked by an imperial martial expert was a great humiliation. Boom! With a stomp of his foot, a black ripple exploded out, causing the entire wall to tremble. Dian Mangpoj borrowed this energy to thrust his spear forward like a furious dragon, charging straight at Wang Chong and the others. But the result of this clash was completely different from what Dian Mangpoj had imagined. Bang! The stellar energy exploded with earth-shattering power, shaking the surrounding million tons of airflow. Ding! But in this intense battle, no one noticed that the 5 slender fingers of Wang Chong's left hand suddenly poked at Dian Mangpoj's heavy and tough spear. Whoosh! Like a punctured balloon, the stellar energy in Dian Mangpoj's body suddenly went out of control. A portion of it leaked out and entered Wang Chong's body. Brat, what evil art did you use? Dian Mangpoj was stunned. Wang Chong, on the other hand, sneered. His right hand clawed at the air. Boom! Boundless stellar energy and blood energy entered his body. With the activation of Death's Scythe, Wang Chong was able to borrow the strength of the others to increase the power of the great Yin-Yang Heaven creation art. As an imperial brigadier general, Dian Mangpoj's stellar energy was incredibly dense and condensed. It was far more difficult to absorb his inner energy than it was for other martial artists. But it was only difficult. The great Yin-Yang Heaven creation art was known as the #1 martial art of the evil path for thousands of years. It was a terrifying martial art that struck fear into the hearts of countless righteous, evil, and demonic cultivators. No matter how strong Dian Mangpoj was, he was still in the realm of normal. Buzz! Stellar energy surged, and for a radius of several hundred zhang, the winds howled. Under the effect of the great Yin-Yang Heaven creation art, all the air currents transformed into raging dragons. As if they had a life of their own, they roared and roared as they slammed into Dian Mangpoj from all directions. To an expert of Dian Mangpoj's level, these raging dragons were far from being able to harm him, but they infuriated him to no end. Even more dangerous was that the tens of thousands of raging dragons and python-like air currents would constantly disrupt and affect Dian Mangpoj's ability to fight, even though they could not actually harm him. This was extremely dangerous. Although Wang Chong was not as strong as Dian Mangpoj, he was not so weak that Dian Mangpoj could ignore him. In terms of pure strength, Wang Chong was actually a perfect match for an ordinary Saint Martial Realm expert. Moreover, his combat experience and skills were something that even Dian Mangpoj found troublesome. Damn it! Damn it! Dian Mangpoj's hair was disheveled, and a violent rage was raging in his heart. What had angered him was not just Wang Chong's strange martial art that could disperse 40% of his strength, but also Qing Sanyuan, Su Shixian, and the other clowns. Su Kui, attack his upper 3. Chen Bin, attack his lower 3. Shixian, work with us and attack his right ribs. Everyone, work together to help young master. Qing Sanyuan, Su Shixian, and the others did not remain idle while Wang Chong was attacking. Taking advantage of the time when Wang Chong was restraining Dian Mangpoj, the 32 generals of the City of Steel attacked Dian Mangpoj from all sides. In normal circumstances, without Wang Chong restraining them, these ants would have died at his hands. But when Dian Mangpoj was distracted by Wang Chong, these ants attacked without the slightest scruple. Not even Dian Mangpoj could defend against 32 people, the 64 hands unleashing a dense barrage of attacks from every direction. Bang bang bang. One attack after another slammed into Dian Mangban's stellar energy barrier like a torrential rain. Although they still could not break it, Qing Sanyuan, Su Shixian, and the others were using this method to constantly consume the stellar energy in Dian Mangpoj's body. In this battle, after Wang Chong activated the Death's Scythe array, he had imperceptibly added a competition of internal energy consumption and stellar energy. No matter how formidable Dayan Mangpoj was, he was just one person, and the Uzun Plateau favored individual bravery, not joint array techniques. Although it was like the Tang dynasty's mighty miracle god array, in which tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of soldiers could be added to a single array, it was impossible for the Uzun Plateau to accomplish such a thing. Clowns, you're truly seeking your own death. Dayan Mangpoj clenched his teeth, the corners of his eyes twitching madly. Without the slightest hesitation, the moment he forced back Wang Chong, Dayan Mangpoj's dark red spear, which had been pointed at Wang Chong just a moment ago, suddenly slanted and stabbed at a Death's Scythe officer behind him. The spear was solid, and it exploded with waves of chi. Then, Dayan Mangpoj's brigadier general thrust actually missed. Dayan Mangpoj, don't mess with the target. Your target is me. Wang Chong sneered. The Wuxia steel sword in his hand swung through the air, creating thousands of sword images. Meanwhile, Wang Chong's entire aura suddenly transformed, becoming sharp and straight, like a heavenly sword that had descended to the mortal world. The art of god and demon obliteration was the #1 sword technique that war god So Yung-sun had given to Wang Chong after their match under the scholar tree after the Southwestern War. Chapter 739. Buzz. In a flash of white light, a shallow scar flitted through the air, lingering in the air for a long time. Meanwhile, Wang Chong's sword image had already cut through Dayan Mangpoj's stellar energy barrier. The invisible and formless stellar energy barrier had been cut in two like a watermelon, causing Dayan Mangpoj's entire body to tremble in fear. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Dayan Mangpoj clenched his teeth, his eyelids twitching. The Great Snow Mountain Temple was said to have a 1,000-year legacy, the source of all martial arts on the plateau, and its ancient legacy was said to be on par with the entire Central Plains. But even someone like Dayan Mangpoj, who had ascended the holy mountain, entered the holy temple, and met with his master, had never seen anyone use so many powerful martial arts. Wang Chong was clearly a major realm lower than him, but he just happened to have all sorts of strange and wondrous arts. An evil art that could absorb energy was astonishing enough, and now he had this inconceivably sharp sword chi. Even in the holy temple, Dayan Mangpoj had rarely seen anyone learn so many powerful martial arts at once. Squad 3, Squad 4, Squad 7, Squad 12. Death's Scythe Formation. Dayan Mangpoj, the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. I'll kill you first, and then I'll kill your white braves. I'd like to see just what Uzun will use to fight against me. Wang Chong's eyes were bright and sharp as a sword in the darkness. His resounding voice was like a peal of thunder that resounded over the city. The art of war had a saying that soldiers were valued for quality, not quantity. The environment of Chishi was complex, and Dayan Mangpoj's decision to use several thousand white braves to attack the city was the correct one. In terms of the art of war alone, Dayan Mangpoj had already surpassed many famous generals of the Uzun and even the Tang dynasty. Even as an opponent, Wang Chong could not help but admire him. Unfortunately, there was always someone better out there. Dayan Mangpoj had met himself. As long as he got rid of Dayan Mangpoj and started a street fight in the city, no matter how famous the White Lion was, to Wang Chong, without his warhorse, he was nothing more than an ear. Wang Chong could even take the initiative to open the city after killing Dayan Mangpoj and kill everyone before dawn. Moreover, with Dayan Mangpoj's death, Chishi would have one less major threat. Yes, Marquis. Steel-blooded voices came from all around, and in a few short moments, one elite soldier after another who had fought with Wang Chong in the War of the Southwest had gathered together and fused together. Once the War of the Southwest had concluded, Wang Chong had begun to popularize the Death's Scythe battle formation, and now it was finally beginning to show its power. Everyone, go and help Marquis. The enemy this time is extremely powerful. Everyone, be careful. Understood. With these final words, the combat squads howled forward. Stellar energy roiled as all sorts of supreme martial arts greeted Dian Mengpoj. The benefits of being born into a great clan were immediately apparent. Python Dragon Roar. Chi Spear Art. 7 Destruction Slashes. Combat squads of 7 to 10 people each attacked Dian Mengpoj from every direction. All sorts of martial arts attacked Dian Mengpoj's barrier. 3rd Squad, Southwest, target Mingmen Point. 4th Squad, Southeast, target Clavicle Point. 7th Squad, fall back. Wang Chong had barely finished speaking when, boom. 7th Squad dodged one destructive black dragon stellar energy after another. If not for Wang Chong's timely order, 7th Squad would have been heavily injured. Continue. 12th Squad, take over 7th Squad's position. As clear orders were issued, Wang Chong's outstanding ability to command the battlefield was on full display. In Wang Chong's hands, what should have been a simple one-on-one duel between martial artists had become a battle of many against one, a battle that was akin to a war. On one side of the battlefield was Wang Chong and his nearly 100 elites, while on the other was the infamous Brigadier General of Uzun, Dian Mengpoj. Although Dian Mengpoj had also brought 2,000 or 3,000 white braves with him, the presence of the Steel Citadel made it impossible for them to help. 21st, 22nd, and 23rd Squads, get ready, and join the fray. Wang Chong was still having more elites join the battle. The top of the walls was narrow, but Wang Chong was able to exploit the terrain to attack from different angles. Bang bang bang. One combat team after another responded to Wang Chong's call and entered the fray. At this time, the only squad that had not been summoned was the Ballista Squad. Twang twang twang. Booms rang out. Wang Chong had only prepared 4 ballistae, but he had countless ballista bolts. Thick ballista bolts were strewn across the ground, seemingly endless. Although he had lost Qing Sanyuan and Su Shixian, the White Braves were able to rely on their proficiency and the terrifying power of the ballistae to limit the White Braves' ability to scale the walls. The 2,000-some White Braves were still unable to scale the walls, so they naturally couldn't open the gates. These elite White Braves of the Uzun Plateau naturally had no idea that the commander-in-chief of this operation, Dian Mengpoj, was almost driven mad by Wang Chong. Damn thing! Die for me! The corner of Dian Mengpoj's eyes twitched as he grew more and more irritated. Boom! He threw his spear, not at Wang Chong, but at the Death Sickle squad of the Tang dynasty. The nature of this battle was changing. Dian Mengpoj had never imagined that these soldiers of the Tang dynasty, whom he had looked down on at the start, would cause him to feel so irritated. In just a few short moments, Wang Chong had summoned 20-some squads, nearly 180 soldiers. They covered an area of several hundred zhang and were attacking him from every direction. This battle had become 1 against 100, and he was simultaneously facing the attacks of Wang Chong and nearly 200 soldiers. In normal circumstances, this sort of situation would have never occurred. If someone else had used this method to deal with him and wear down his energy, they would have been foolish beyond belief and seeking death. But Wang Chong had made this possible. Wang Chong, do you really think I can't deal with you? Great snow seals the world, demon dragon destroys the world. A vicious light flashed in Dian Mengpoj's eyes. Even he was beginning to find it somewhat unbearable to expend so much energy. Boom! A moment later, black energy exploded as Dian Mengpoj shot into the sky like a black meteor. Boom! As the black meteor reached its highest point, the 100,000-some craftsmen and guards in the City of Steel suddenly saw a massive snowy mountain covered in white armor. Unlike any of the previous times, the snowy mountain was even more solid, more concrete, and even larger. From a distance, it was more than 100 zhang tall, enough to stun anyone who saw it. Roar! The gigantic dragon roared. Right below the gigantic snow mountain, black clouds billowed, and a gigantic, malevolent-looking demonic dragon appeared. It was ferocious, and its blood-red eyes were filled with an aura that could destroy everything in the world. In the face of absolute power, all skills are just insignificant tricks. Let me show you what true power is. Dian Mangpo's voice echoed over the city of steel like a god. At this moment, the world fell silent. Everyone felt a fear that came from the depths of their souls as they looked at the massive demon dragon in the sky. Great snow seals the world, demon dragon destroys the world. This was the most powerful and profound move of the Great Snow Mountain Demon Dragon art. Dian Mangpo had once used this move to destroy Little Balor, completely destroying its city and forcing this small country in the western regions behind Uzun to surrender and become a vassal state of Uzun. The power of this move was enough to destroy all targets on the city walls, including Wang Chong. Humph! Wang Chong sneered, his long hair blowing in the wind as he raised his head to the sky, his expression devoid of fear. Dian Mangpo, your thinking is too simple. So what if it's the Great Snow Mountain? So what if it's a demon dragon? Let me show you what a true martial art of the Central Plains is. Yin and Yang Mutual Transformation, Universe Reversal, Great Yang Art. With a howl, Wang Chong suddenly gathered all the energy in his body, along with the energy of the 32 officers, and soared into the sky like a sparrow hawk. Bzzz. The illusory images of the sun and moon on Wang Chong's left and right shoulders suddenly began to solidify, transforming into two surging streams of energy, one golden and one red. As they swirled in the air, they formed a yin and yang force field with a radius of more than 100 feet and the shape of a sun. The great yin-yang heaven creation art was not a technique purely used for combat. Its greater use was to absorb the energy of an opponent, rapidly increasing the strength of a cultivator. Thus, combat was not its primary task. But this did not mean that its combat ability was weak. On the contrary, the reason why the great yin-yang heaven creation art was ranked number 1 on the evil path, and why all martial artists paled at the mere mention of it, was precisely because of its terrifying combat ability. As the number 1 martial art of the evil path for thousands of years, the great yin-yang heaven creation art had 3 supreme techniques for combat. Yin and Yang Mutual Transformation, Universe Reversal, Great Yang Art, was one of them. Each of the 3 techniques of the great yin-yang heaven creation art had extremely stringent requirements to use. For example, the great yang art was specially used to defeat the strong, to deal with opponents like Dian Mangpo who were stronger than him. But this technique could only be used at an extremely high level. If Wang Chong had not borrowed the power of the Death God Scythe formation to increase his strength and also absorbed a portion of Dian Mangpo's stellar energy, he would not have been able to use this technique. In addition, if he wanted to use this technique, he would have to expend a large amount of blood qi and psychic energy. If he was unable to finish off his opponent in one move, then his strength would plummet, and he would very likely be hunted down by his opponent. This was also the reason why Wang Chong did not casually use this technique. Boom! In the blink of an eye, Wang Chong's golden-red stellar energy collided with Dian Mangpo in the air. There was an earth-shaking explosion, and it seemed like space itself was being torn apart. Everyone's ears were ringing from the shockwaves, and they saw stars. Cover your ears. Chapter 740. Boom! 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 In the air, Wang Chong's stellar energy fiercely collided with Dian Mangpo's. Wang Chong's strength was far inferior to Dian Mangpo's, but under the effect of some strange energy, at least half of Dian Mangpo's stellar energy was borrowed by Wang Chong, which, along with Wang Chong's own strength, transformed into a roiling flood that crashed into Dian Mangpo. Roar! The dragon roared and the snow mountain crumbled. At this moment, there was a faint roar of pain, and then a black figure crashed down from the sky, crashing onto the wall. Boom! At this moment, everyone could clearly see that the figure falling down was not Wang Chong, but Dian Mangpo. How is this possible? Su Ke and the others were stunned. They had experienced Dian Mangpo's power, and the fact that he had needed nearly 200 elites of the army to surround and attack him was a testament to his strength. Wang Chong soared into the sky. Everyone had been prepared to receive Wang Chong in the event of his defeat, but no one had expected that the seemingly powerful Dian Mangpoj would be defeated in this one-on-one battle. Moreover, it seemed like he had been heavily injured. "Kid, you're quite impressive this time, to think of such a method. But this is far from over. Next time, I'll come again, but at that time, you might not have such good luck. Retreat." Dian Mangpoj's voice echoed over the city of steel, brimming with viciousness and resentment. Before anyone could react, Dian Mangpoj suddenly leaped off the wall and vanished. This sudden scene caused everyone to be extremely astounded, and it was completely out of their expectations. No one expected Dian Mangpoj to withdraw his troops at this time. Wang, and almost not long after he flipped over the city wall, there was a flash of light, and Wang Chong floated down from the sky, landing at the place where Dian Mangpoj had fallen. His gaze crossed the city wall and quickly landed outside. When Dian Mangpoj jumped off the battlefield, the White Braves, who had charged forward fearlessly and seemed like they would never stop attacking, suddenly fell into chaos. Many of the White Braves didn't even know what had happened. All they saw was Dian Mangpoj jump off the walls, mount a warhorse, and gallop off into the distance. The fearless bravery of the White Braves vanished without a trace. "Archers! Get ready!" Wang Chong's expression was solemn. He raised an arm and suddenly ordered. Creak, creak, within the inner wall, the archers of the aristocratic families suddenly leaped onto the top of the city wall, pulling the bows in their hands to the maximum. Bang! 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 A dense rain of arrows rained down like locusts, and 15 meters above the ground, arrows from the beehives also shot out of the walls toward the thousands of White Braves. Nay! The warhorses whinnied as they rose into the air. The arrows struck the warhorse's rump, and the intense pain caused many White Braves to be thrown off their horses. Some of the warhorses, struck in their vitals, fell dead to the ground. Bang! At this sight, the neighing of the warhorses and the panicked shouts of the White Braves, the entire city exploded with cheers. Wonderful! We've won! I just knew that with Marquis here, no one would be able to take the City of Steel. The City of Steel was a sea of cheers. On the walls, the clan experts and guards were prostrating themselves in admiration toward Wang Chong. At the start of the Uzun assault, the various clans had sent archers to fire a volley of arrows, but they had been stopped by Wang Chong. They had been puzzled at the time, but now, no one doubted Wang Chong's decision. Although these Uzun soldiers were fully armored, even their horses, no matter how formidable the Uzun soldiers were, they couldn't protect the warhorse's rump. This was the only flaw in the Uzun soldiers' defense. This wasn't because the Uzun soldiers had been careless and hadn't thought of this point. It was because the rump of a warhorse was precisely where it excreted, and it also had a long ponytail. Armor was very difficult to make, and the warhorse would often kick out in discomfort. This shouldn't have been a very big problem, but now, it had become the Uzun's Achilles heel, and Wang Chong was using it to his advantage. In the Ney, 200 Uzun soldiers had fallen to the ground. Hurry and save them. Hearing the ruckus behind them, the Uzun White Braves turned their horses around, intending to save their fallen comrades. However, what greeted them were incomparably sharp crossbow bolts that could pierce through gold and split mountains. Bang! One of the Uzun White Braves had just turned his horse around and was charging back when a long crossbow bolt pierced through his head. The Uzun White Brave's eyes went wide, his body trembling as he fell from his horse. Twang! One after another, long crossbow bolts were shot down from the top of the city walls, concentrated like rain. As more and more White Braves fled from the walls, the 4 ballista teams no longer had any misgivings. A dense rain of bolts rained down on the White Braves. Taking advantage of the panic and chaos of the Uzun soldiers, the 4 ballista teams fired from the walls. In a short period of time, 30 to 40 Uzun white braves had been shot down by the crossbow bolts as they tried to turn around to save their comrades. Retreat! Hurry and retreat! In the distance, an Uzun white brave leader anxiously shouted. Although they were unwilling, all the Uzun soldiers still followed. Marquis, a good chance. Let's go after him. On the walls, Qing Sanyuan, Su Shixian, and the others were overjoyed at this sight. Dian Mangpoj had been defeated by Wang Chong, and the Uzun soldiers were in a state of panic. This was the perfect chance to pursue and reap the rewards of this battle. There's no need. Wang Chong suddenly stopped him. Now is not the time to pursue. Su Kui, take some people and finish off those Uzun soldiers who have fallen from their horses. Without their horses, they won't be able to get far. With these final words, Wang Chong lightly coughed, his voice tinged with weakness. Qing Sanyuan, Su Shixian, and the others were alarmed. Raising their heads, they saw that Wang Chong's face was pale and his aura was weak. He was far from the smug and victorious appearance they had imagined. Marquis. Alarmed, they hurriedly went to support Wang Chong. As expected of Uzun's brigadier general, the future king of the great general. I underestimated him. As he looked in the direction that Dian Mangpoj had fled, Wang Chong's eyes flashed. After all, there was a gap in cultivation between him and Dian Mangpoj. Although Wang Chong had used the great yin yang art to reverse Dian Mangpoj's attack and use it on himself, Wang Chong had not been able to absorb his energy, much less wound him. Dian Mangpoj had only been too panicked and surprised. If he waited until he realized that he was not as formidable as he had imagined, the city of steel would truly be in danger. Hurry up and clean up the battlefield. Wang Chong said. Yes, Marquis. Everyone hurriedly lowered their heads. After saying this, Wang Chong ignored them and jumped down from the wall. In the air, he used the great yin-yang heaven creation art to aim at the walls of the city of steel and suck in the air, reducing the speed of his descent to the minimum. Roar! He's the leader of the Tang people. Kill him and we'll succeed. Wang Chong had just landed when he heard the roars of the Uzun. The first reaction of the fallen Uzun white braves upon seeing Wang Chong was not to flee, but to pull out their scimitars and charge at Wang Chong. Humph! Wang Chong only sneered, not even glancing at them. He activated the great yin-yang heaven creation art, and when the 4 Uzun white braves were still several dozen feet away from Wang Chong, their faces filled with shock and their bodies trembled. The stellar energy in their bodies surged uncontrollably into Wang Chong's body. Demon art. The 4 Uzun white braves trembled all over, and in the blink of an eye, they were reduced to desiccated corpses, dropping to the ground along with their armor. Ah! Wang Chong gave a long sigh of relief. With the replenishment of energy from these white braves, he immediately felt much better. It's time to end this battle. Wang Chong opened his eyes and looked at the nearby Uzun white braves, a thought flashing through his mind. Buzz! In a flash of light, Wang Chong appeared 10 some zhang away in front of a white brave, the fingers of his right hand pressing against the top of his head. Save me. The white brave's eyes were wide open, his face stricken with fear as Wang Chong sucked him dry of energy and killed him. Screams rang out from outside the city of steel. These white braves who had been so bloodthirsty on the Uzun plateau had become Wang Chong's prey. This was no longer a battle, but a one-sided massacre. A few moments later, the battle was over, and the corpses of nearly 200 Uzun white braves had been added to the pile outside the city. These elite cavalry, whose strength rivaled that of the Mamelukes, were nothing more than ants in the face of a powerful existence like Wang Chong. The advantage of an army lay in its numbers. Without an absolute advantage in numbers, it wouldn't be much better than an ordinary martial artist fighting alone against a top-class martial artist. Marquis, the battle in the city is over. All 16 Uzun soldiers have been eliminated, and the city of steel has regained its peace. Our brothers are already dealing with the aftermath and the corpses. Outside the city of steel, more than 800 zhang away from the walls, Wang Chong was in the middle of regulating his breathing, his body seething with blood energy when he heard a familiar voice. Have you found out how they got in? Wang Chong's brow rose as he opened his eyes and asked. Chapter 741. The 150,000 experienced craftsmen in the city might have been laying bricks and adding tiles to the walls, but in battle, these 150,000 pairs of eyes would serve as the best scouts and scouts. No one would be able to escape their eyes and stealthily infiltrate the city of steel. But the truth was that before Dian Mangpoch had truly launched his sneak attack, there had been nothing strange in the city. To put it simply, Dian Mangpoch had not climbed the walls to get in, but had infiltrated the city of steel beforehand. From a certain perspective, this was simply inconceivable. Time was short, and we didn't have time to investigate. But according to Marquis's usual practice, after the incident, we took stock of everything and discovered several broken wooden chests. Those chests all have large holes in them, and at least half of the steel and steel modules are missing. Behind Wang Chong, a young man of 27 or 28 reported the results of his investigation. Wang Chong's brow creased, but then he understood. I truly underestimated him. He actually used the goods transported from the capital to the various prefectures to tamper with them. This Uzun madman seems to be much more meticulous than I imagined. Wang Chong quietly said to himself. For the sake of secrecy, Wang Chong had sealed many of the steel modules in wooden chests so that outsiders would not be able to see what was inside. The fact that someone had made a hole in these chests wasn't too big of a deal, not enough to make anyone think too much of it. But the fact that quite a few of the steel modules were missing was not as simple as it seemed. If his guess was right, this was probably why they had been able to hide from him and the 150,000 craftsmen in the city. I understand. Let's end this matter here. Increase security. In addition, Wang Chong took 2 steps back, but then he suddenly thought of something and stopped. In addition, have someone come and clean this place up. After glancing behind him, Wang Chong quickly left. The winds howled, and the thick stench of blood wafted through the air. Behind Wang Chong, the ground was strewn with the corpses of Uzun white braves. There was nothing that didn't require a price. Dian Mangpoch had retreated, but the 200-some elite Uzun white braves were the price he had to pay. The warhorses galloped through the darkness as the Uzun white braves fled toward the Tibetan plateau. Next to Dian Mangpoch was an Uzun white braves deputy general, his face bewildered. Sir, what do we do now? The adjutant's eyes revealed a trace of deep worry. A force of more than 2,000 white braves had lost 200 or 300 men in the siege. Such a loss had never occurred to the elite white braves before. This tiny city of steel had lost more white braves than an entire country. At the very least, the white braves had never suffered such casualties when they attacked greater and lesser valor. And when they thought about how Lord Dusong Mangpoch was still waiting on the edge of the plateau for news of their victorious return, they began to tremble in fear and unease. I truly didn't think that we would be defeated in that small city with less than a few thousand soldiers. I didn't think that that brat from the Tang dynasty would be even more formidable than the legends say. Milord's attack was wise, and he was able to conquer the city and pull out the ground. I didn't think that not even Milord would be able to deal with him. Moreover, that city is unbelievably sturdy. Tsongka and Zangba's metal attribute superpowers can easily turn a city gate into iron filings or into a steel giant. In previous battles, this move has always been successful. But this time, the two of them only managed to dig out a few inches. I truly can't believe it. General has always been proud. Now that he was defeated by a youth from the Tang dynasty, he must be feeling very uncomfortable. In the darkness, beneath the stars, the Uzun white braves all had different expressions on their faces as they thought about the battle just now, but none of them dared to say what they were thinking. They had already made ample preparations for this operation. The Great Snow Mountain Holy Land had deployed siege awls, the 5-clawed grappling hooks that could scale the walls, the hooves of horses, the metal element ability users, and the infiltration of the city ahead of time. To deal with a city that was still under construction, this was more than enough to kill a chicken with a butcher's knife. But who could have imagined that their opponent would be even more formidable? Moreover, even their leader, Dayan Mangpoj, had been defeated by them. In Uzan, although Dayan Mangpoj did not often lead troops into battle, he held an extremely high prestige in the hearts of the White Braves, not one bit inferior to the famed generals of the empire like Wuxia Wuzong. In truth, Dayan Mangpoj had already used the conquest of the surrounding small countries to prove himself. In those countries, Dayan Mangpoj's name was even more famous than all the other great generals of the empire. But no one had expected that the mission would fail. Not even their general had personally taken action and failed to kill that brat. Ha ha ha, that brat is smarter than I imagined. I underestimated him. An amused voice suddenly rang out in everyone's ears. Dayan Mangpoj smacked his lips and grinned. There was not the slightest hint of dejection on his face. On the contrary, it was brimming with a strong will to fight. "Milord," in a flash, everyone was dumbfounded. They had anticipated Dayan Mangpoj's various reactions, dejection, depression, but they had never imagined this. He. Dayan Mangpoj sneered, paying no attention to the people around him. Instead, he was thinking about the battle that had just concluded. His mind was in turmoil as he recalled many things. It had been a long time since he had encountered such an interesting opponent. Dayan Mangpoj could sense that his opponent was clearly weaker than him. In the past, the first time he had attacked while hiding under the walls, he would have been dead. But that fellow's senses were extremely sharp, and he had actually failed that time. This sort of thing had never happened before. Dayan Mangpoj's original intention had been to prevent Wang Chong from hiding in the crowd and using the 100,000 craftsmen as a cover to avoid battle, or perhaps even abandon the city and flee. In that case, his actions would have been meaningless. That was why Dayan Mangpoj, with his strength of a brigadier general, did not directly charge into the city. Instead, he quietly approached and hid, waiting for the best opportunity to ambush and assassinate. Dayan Mangpoj had used such an ambush many times when dealing with the small countries around Uzan such as Little Baller. The other side's generals did not even get a clear look at their opponent before they died in Dayan Mangpoj's hands. But Dayan Mangpoj did not expect that everything would go smoothly this time, and that Wang Chong's attention would also be attracted by the soldiers he had sent to the city. The only surprise was that, the operation had actually failed. Ever since Dayan Mangpoj left the Great Snow Mountain Temple, this was the first time he had encountered such a formidable opponent in terms of strategy and tactics. However, this was a coincidence. There won't be such a good opportunity next time. Dayan Mangban said, his eyes bright and his expression like that of a ferocious beast, sending chills down one's spine. The White Braves were skilled in fighting in the open, and when charging in the open, the White Braves could look down on the world, capable of dealing with 5 to 10 times their number of cavalry. But the city of steel that Wang Chong had built was so sturdy and tall that even a full-strength attack from a brigadier general like Dayan Mangpoj had failed to destroy this city that had been hastily constructed in a month. This was something he had never imagined. Dayan Mangbomangji had 2,000 or 3,000 subordinates outside the city, but they were kept out of the city walls, unable to help him in his battle with Wang Chong. On the other hand, Wang Chong had summoned more than 200 of his subordinates and divided them into small groups. Using the strength of these small groups to attack him in an orderly manner, they were able to consume his stellar energy and internal energy. Dayan Mangbomangji had never encountered such a situation before. It could be said that none of the opponents Dayan Mangpoj had encountered before had this ability. But this only served to further agitate Dayan Mangpoj's killing intent. Right now, even if the Tsenpo gave the order, he still wouldn't let go of this mission. There's no need to worry about the Tsenpo and Lord Mangpoj. I will explain things to them myself. Dayan Mangpoch sinisterly smiled, his gaze deep in thought as he looked into the distance. In addition, get ready. For the time being, we won't need to worry about the City of Steel. We'll go to the plateau in a little while. Right now, come with me to the camp of the Qixi Protectorate. Since we can't deal with that brat from the Wang clan, we'll go collect some interest first. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned at first, but soon, they all started cheering. Yes, milord. With a thunderous galloping of hooves, the 2,000-some Uzun white braves suddenly changed direction. Instead of returning to the Uzun plateau along the usual path, they galloped off in a different direction under the starry night. This night was bound to be a restless one. Flap flap. Not long after Dayan Mangpoch left with his elite cavalry, a pitch-black pigeon with golden eyes flew through the air and into the main hall of the Qixi Protectorate headquarters. Bzzz. For a moment, time seemed to stop, the Qixi Protectorate headquarters plunging into a deathly stillness, as if all the air in a radius of several hundred li had been sucked out. But a moment later, boom! The earth quaked and the entire Qixi Protectorate began to tremble and crack. An enraged and irrepressible voice resounded through the heavens. Bastard! Useless thing! You can't even do something as simple as this. This one spent so much effort in vain. How infuriating! A vast and mountainous energy swept out like a storm, shaking everything within a radius of 100 li. Fomenlinta was like an enraged beast, his frenzied, hurricane-like energy causing everyone to tremble in fear. On the border between Qixi and the Uzun plateau, Fomenlinta had taken a great risk to open up a gap for the Uzun soldiers to pass through. Dusong Mangpoch was a smart man and should have understood his intentions. Chapter 742. Has Dusong Mangpoch lost his mind? Useless thing, wasting the chance I gave him. He only sent 2,000-some soldiers to attack the city. And that Dayan Mangpoch, I thought he was some sort of character on the steppe, but, he's really trash. Is there really no one else on the Uzun plateau besides Witadra Konglo and Dalen Trinling? In the Protector General's hall, Fomenlinta had not slept the entire night. Ever since his meeting with Wang Chong, his spies had been in the vicinity of the City of Steel day and night. Nothing that happened there could escape his notice. Thus, the moment Dayan Mangpoch was defeated, Fomenlinta immediately received the news. But at this moment, the veins on Fomenlinta's forehead were bulging like earthworms, his face red with rage, and his hands were constantly trembling in disappointment and rage. Colluding with a foreign power was like inviting a wolf into the house. If this matter were reported to the imperial court, the risk he had taken would be unimaginable. But even after taking such a massive risk, his foe had still failed. One could easily imagine the rage in Fomenlinta's heart. Wuxiang was right in front of him, but to Fomenlinta, it was like a fish bone stuck in his throat. Reporting. Before the first wave had even settled, a panicked voice came from outside the door. Milord, it's bad. The NU vanquishing camp has been attacked. More than 5,000 of our soldiers have been killed, and General Pulin has been killed. What? In shock, Fomenlinta stood up from his seat. There was only one General Pulin in the Qixi Protectorate, and that was Pulin He, who he viewed as his left and right arm. Just like him, he was also a Hu. Pulin He was a very skilled martial artist, and he had fought alongside Fomenlinta in the western regions for many years. He was extremely experienced, and in his battles with Uzun, he had made many great contributions. He could be said to be one of the people that Fomenlinta relied on the most. Impossible. Are you sure you're not mistaken? Fomenlinta's first reaction was that it was impossible. Report. As soon as Fomenlinta finished speaking, another panicked voice came from outside the hall, accompanied by the hurried sound of horse hooves. There's an urgent report from the conquering Crow army. They've been attacked and General Pulin has been killed. Before his voice faded away, a gust of wind blew in from outside the door. In the gust of wind, a dusty lieutenant rushed into the hall and knelt on the ground. On this lieutenant's back was a dark red arrow of command that was dripping with blood. This was an arrow of command that would only appear when something important happened in the army. When he saw this arrow, Fomenlinta's body trembled, and he finally couldn't help but let out a deafening roar. Dusong Mangpoj. This furious roar was like a clap of thunder that resounded over all of Chishi. The city of steel was brightly lit and bustling with activity. Marquis. We've already investigated. Just yesterday, one of our caravans was attacked on the way to Wuxiang. We sent some guards to investigate, but because the caravan was unharmed and the goods were undamaged, we didn't pay much attention to it and didn't report it to our superiors. Wang Chong was seated in a newly constructed residence, several officers in front of him. One of these officers was tall and thin, and he was carefully flipping through a diary. Have you found the people escorting the steel caravan? Wang Chong raised his eyes and asked. Replying to Marquis, it hasn't been long, and the incident happened yesterday. They're still in the city, planning to leave tomorrow morning. I've already called them over, and they're waiting outside the gate. Chen Bin said. Wang Chong nodded, and several panic-stricken caravan members quickly walked in. After some careful questioning, everything was as they had expected. The people who had attacked them were all masked, with only their eyes showing. The caravan members had believed that they were bandits and highwaymen, but because there had been no casualties and no damage to the goods, they hadn't paid much attention to them. At the time, fearing that their reputation would be affected, they had even taken the initiative to persuade the guards to suppress the matter. But now that something like this had happened, they were clearly very uneasy. As expected. Wang Chong slightly closed his eyes, his body leaning back against the back of the red sandalwood chair, the index finger of his right hand unconsciously tapping against the armrest. These people were inexperienced, so they were oblivious to the situation. However, Wang Chong had participated in the extermination of bandits before, and he knew that bandits and highwaymen lived on the edge of a blade. These people were straightforward, and they were true fugitives. To them, raiding and robbing was just like eating or drinking. It was a completely daily occurrence. Thus, when these bandits and highwaymen truly took action, they wouldn't do anything superfluous. They would cover themselves completely, leaving only their eyes exposed. It was obvious that Uzin's men were doing this to conceal their identities. Dian Mangpoj, he's truly difficult to deal with. Wang Chong unconsciously tapped his fingers as he thought to himself. Even as an enemy, Wang Chong couldn't help but admire Dian Mangpoj's ability to think of such a plan to sneak into the city. Truly, this was the only flaw in the city of steel. Wuxian was barren and desolate, and all its steel came from the capital and the various provinces and cities of the Tang dynasty. The distance was long, and the transportation routes were long. This made the entire transportation process full of variables. Dian Mangpoj had clearly used this point. For Uzin's men to discover this early in their assault on the city isn't a bad thing, but a good thing. Pass on my order. In the future, all goods entering the city of steel must be opened and inspected. In addition, as long as they occur, even if they aren't in the vicinity of the city of steel, they must all be recorded. Wang Chong said. Yes, Marquis. Everyone bowed. Reporting. Just at this moment, the sound of hurried footsteps could be heard from outside the door. A soldier from the army hurriedly walked in. In an instant, the room fell silent. Everyone turned their heads to look at the source of the sound. Marquis, there's an urgent report from the front. The Chishi Protectorate's camp on the Uzin border has been attacked. More than 5,000 soldiers of the Chishi Protectorate army have been killed, including General Pulanhe. These words were earth-shattering, and everyone's faces were covered in shock. Was it Dusong Mangpoj? A general at Wang Chong's side said. No, it was Dian Mangpoj. The soldier who passed the order said. Like a stone stirring 1,000 ripples, everyone appeared incredulous, and even Wang Chong frowned. Dian Mangpoch had just failed in his assault on the City of Steel, and after losing 200 to 300 soldiers to Wang Chong, he had actually turned around and attacked the Qixi Protectorate's camp. No one had expected this. Can you confirm it? Wang Chong gripped the armrests of his chair and slowly stood up. Marquis, it's absolutely true. The news should have already reached Qixi and the imperial court by now. The kneeling soldier respectfully said. So it was like this. Wang Chong raised his head and closed his eyes, a look of deep confusion on his face. This was yet another event that had never occurred in Wang Chong's memories. If he had not appeared in Wuxiang, Dian Mangpoch would not have mounted 1,000 Li cavalry to deal with him. If he had not failed in his assault on the city and returned in defeat, Dian Mangpoch would not have vented his anger by attacking the Qixi Protectorate, and Pulan he would not have died in battle. All of these events were closely linked. Marquis, this is a good chance. A voice came from the side. Cheng Sunyuan's eyes were bright as he suddenly interjected, Fomenlinta let Uzin's men in, which led to today's incident. We can use this point to report it to the imperial court and deal with Fomenlinta. As soon as Cheng Sanyuan finished speaking, everyone in the room reacted. That's right. Fomenlinta even led his army in the City of Steel to threaten Marquis. This time, Marquis can turn the tables and deal with him. Let's see how he'll explain this to the imperial court. 5,000 or 6,000 casualties is no trifling matter. Fomenlinta probably never imagined that he would have such a day. This is called trying to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice used to lure it. Marquis, we can't let him go this time. Everyone began to speak. They could already imagine the pressure Fomenlinta was facing after committing such a grave mistake. Enough. Wang Chong raised a hand and shouted. Wang Chong's words instantly plunged the room into a deathly stillness. Everyone lowered their heads, their expressions respectful. There was only one voice in the City of Steel, Wang Chong. When Wang Chong made a decision, there would be no second voice. This matter cannot topple Fomenlinta. Wang Chong said. Although he had no good impression of Fomenlinta and had even been threatened not long ago, at this moment, Wang Chong could not muster a shred of excitement or joy. Although the 5,000-some soldiers of the Qixi Protectorate had been subordinates of Fomenlinta, they were still soldiers of the Tang dynasty. From this point of view, the losses of the Qixi army were also losses of the Tang dynasty. Thus, Wang Chong could not muster a shred of joy. But this matter only strengthened Wang Chong's belief that Fomenlinta was no longer suitable for the position of Qixi Protector General. If he hadn't sacrificed his personal interests to allow Dian Mangpoch in, this sort of thing would never have happened. Wang Chong was sure that when the Qixi Protectorate had allowed Dian Mangpoch in, it had never imagined that Dian Mangpoch would bite back. Pulan He's death in battle was inextricably linked to this. As a powerful protector general, this sort of situation could not be allowed. As these thoughts flitted through his mind, Wang Chong quickly regained his composure. But letting him off like this is letting him off too easily. As long as he remains in this position, who knows how many more people will die. I will report this matter to the imperial court. No matter what, he is no longer suitable for the position of Qixi Protector General. The room instantly exploded with cheers at Wang Chong's words. Fomenlinta's reputation was too great, his status too high. Last time, when he had mobilized his forces to threaten Wang Chong, he had left everyone gasping for breath. Now, he could finally teach him a lesson. Marquis is wise. Fomenlinta truly is not suitable for the position of Qixi Protector General. Dian Mangpoch and his 2,000-some men attacked our City of Steel with all their might, using schemes and deceptions, even bringing battering rams and metal element warriors. In the end, not only did they return in defeat, they even allowed Marquis to kill more than 200 of them. Fomenlinta had so many men, but Dian Mangpoch killed more than 5,000 of them. It's obvious at a glance who is superior and who is inferior. To think that Fomenlinta still has the face to flaunt and threaten Marquis. In my view, Marquis is the best candidate for Protector General. Chapter 743. Enough. Wang Chong waved his hand. He wanted to impeach Fomenlinta not because of a personal grudge, but because the Qixi Protectorate, under Fomenlinta's command, would suffer even greater casualties in the future. In the future, Qixi would be fraught with dangers and threats from all sides. Given Fomenlinta's abilities, he would only be able to hold his ground and not advance. He was simply incapable of dealing with this threat. Replacing him was the best method. But Wang Chong would not say these things to Qing Sanyuan and Su Shixian. It's fine to let them misunderstand. Wang Chong quietly said to himself. Putting aside the matter of Fomenlinta, Dian Mangpo's appearance and the White Braves under his command had truly given Wang Chong a wake-up call. The defenses and guards of the City of Steel alone would not be able to deal with any major incidents. It's about time to transfer over Li Sai and the Wuxiang army. Wang Chong quietly said to himself. Based on the time that had passed, Li Sai's training in Wuxiang village should be about done, and the first batch of Wuxiang soldiers should have been born. The White Braves had swept through the world. They were slightly inferior to the Mamelukes, but they were even more valiant. In all of the Central Plains, only the Wuxiang cavalry under Wang Chong's command could surpass them. Flap flap. A few moments later, a messenger bird soared into the sky, flying toward Wuxiang. All of you, listen to me clearly. The duty of a soldier is to obey. Starting from now, you are no longer the villagers of Wuxiang, but professional soldiers of the Tang dynasty. Your duty is to protect the country, to protect those ordinary people who do not have the ability to protect themselves. With great power comes great responsibility. This is the duty of the strong. This is how it is for you, and it is also how it is for me. As swift as the wind, as slow as a forest, as immovable as a mountain, and as aggressive as fire. This was the ultimate goal of every professional soldier and every professional army. This is also the goal each of you must achieve in the end. Soldiers were not martial artists. It was a collective, large-scale battle, not a one-on-one fight between martial artists. Understand, in the valley of Wuxiang village, Li Sai stood upright with his hands behind his back. His 2-meter-tall body was like a mountain, constantly emitting a heavy pressure. The Wuxiang people were too strong. In order to suppress them, only tough men like Li Sai and the charismatic invincible general could do it. In fact, Wang Chong's judgment was not wrong. In just 1 month, Li Sai's outspoken, straightforward, and upright character had won the respect of the villagers in Wuxiang. Understood. As soon as Li Sai's voice fell, the 5,000 Wuxiang recruits in front of him lined up in a neat formation. Each of them looked valiant and heroic as they responded in unison. Their shouts were like a great bell, resounding through the clouds. After almost a month, these 5,000 Wuxiang recruits were worlds apart from the other Wuxiang villagers in terms of spirit, energy, and other aspects. This was obvious. They were more spirited, more upright, more focused on cooperation, and more focused on obeying orders. Very good. Li Sai's eyes were like lightning as he quickly scanned the crowd. His expression was extremely solemn. Now, the first flag on the cliff on the right. You only have 7 seconds. If you are any slower, the training will immediately fail. During the training, if there is any mistake in the team, you will immediately fail. Understood? Understood. The crowd responded loudly again. If you fail, there will be punishment. Do you see those cane bearers at the side of the square? You should know what the consequences are. Li Sai stretched out a finger and pointed into the distance as he said sternly. Boom! A burst of laughter suddenly came from afar. The originally spirited Wuxiang recruits all lowered their heads or turned their faces away. They looked embarrassed and unnatural, no longer as spirited as before. The people of Wuxiang were all powerful. Even a random child had astonishing strength. As for the ordinary villagers, they could easily lift 1 to 2,000 kilograms with one hand. To deal with such people of Wuxiang, any ordinary punishment, including those in the army, was useless. Therefore, Li Sai took an unconventional approach and did not use ordinary methods at all. If the training mission was not completed, they still needed to be caned. However, the ones responsible for the caning were not the soldiers in the army, but some ordinary women and women. Even if these Wuxiang people didn't care if a knife was stabbed into their stomach and half of their blood flowed out, they still couldn't help but change their expressions when they saw the women holding canes. It was a humiliation for a man of 8 feet to be beaten by a woman in front of so many people. This was also the first lesson that Li Sai wanted to teach them, the sense of honor of a soldier. Only when they had the sense of honor of being a man could they have the sense of honor of being a soldier. See air, don't embarrass me. Zhao Jia, if you dare to be beaten by other women, I will skin you alive when you come back. At the edge of the valley, the women of Wuxiang village frowned and shouted. Some of them were mothers, and some were childhood sweethearts. Li Sai's military law required the offender to take off his pants and be beaten. How could they stand it when their sons, as a man, were taken off their pants and beaten by other women? Under the double suppression, the 5,000 recruits under Li Sai were most afraid of this. It was better to let them die than to have their pants taken off and be beaten by women in front of so many people. Now, begin. Without the slightest hesitation, Li Sai's expression was solemn. He stretched out a finger and pointed at a small red token on the cliff to his right. Whing! There was a sudden change. The 5,000 Wuxiang recruits, who had either lowered their heads or turned their heads away, instantly raised their heads and puffed out their chests. They were full of vigor, and their bright eyes were filled with fighting spirit. Hong, almost at the same time that Li Sai gave the order and waved his arm, the first row of 40 Wuxiang recruits shot out like lightning. Their arms hooked, their bodies leaped, and instantly, all of them climbed up the cliff. Moreover, they neatly and quickly climbed up the cliff. All 40 Wuxiang soldiers moved at the same pace, without the slightest deviation. Looking from the side of the cliff, all 40 Wuxiang soldiers were of the same height. There was not the slightest bit of dislocation. Wuxiang, at the same time that this batch of Wuxiang soldiers rushed out, the second wave, the third wave, the fourth wave, the fifth wave, the entire troop of 5,000 people was like a living carpet that quickly floated along the smooth and precipitous surface of the cliff toward the top. Yes. It was floating. When 5,000 people moved and moved at the same speed, it gave off such a feeling. However, if one looked closely, they would discover that this carpet was actually made up of countless Wuxiang soldiers who maintained an orderly formation, like a marching army. Steep cliffs were extremely dangerous. Just climbing up was already extremely difficult, not to mention maintaining an orderly formation between the cliffs. However, these 5,000 well-trained Wuxiang recruits did it. Ah! On both sides of the valley, all the Wuxiang villagers who saw this scene could not help but exclaim. Even for the Wuxiang villagers who climbed and flew between the cliffs as if they were walking on flat ground, it was not easy to do this. It was easy for one person to climb, but it was much more difficult for 2 people to climb at the same time. It was even more difficult for 3 people to climb at the same time. But now, 5,000 people were climbing at the same time, but they could still maintain an orderly formation, as if they were one person. Even for the Wuxiang villagers, this was unbelievable. At this moment, everyone felt a deep respect for the 2-meter-tall burly man at the bottom of the valley. Whoosh! A rapid gust of air rose up the cliff face to the sky. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 5 seconds, 6 seconds, 7 seconds. Once the 7 seconds were up, the 5,000 Wuxiang recruits maintained an orderly formation and quickly climbed up the cliff. The clouds disappeared. The rain stopped. When the last row of Wuxiang recruits climbed up the cliff, everything became quiet again, not a single sound could be heard. Even the 5,000 Wuxiang recruits seemed to have become one with the mountain, not a single sound could be heard. Sweeping like fire. Immovable like a mountain. These 5,000 Wuxiang recruits had completely achieved this. Seeing this scene, even Li Sai couldn't help but nod his head. After training in Wuxiang village for almost a month, there was finally an effect. Just like what Marquis said, these Wuxiang people were indeed born, the best warriors. Walala. As he was thinking, he suddenly heard a fluttering sound. Li Sai's heart skipped a beat. He raised his head and saw a messenger pigeon flying down from the sky. Li Sai's eyelids twitched as he suddenly realized something. He extended an arm and let the pigeon land on it. Then, he removed the letter from the pigeon's leg and read it carefully. See this as an order, return quickly. There were only 6 simple words on the letter. When Li Sai saw these words, he immediately understood what was going on. It's about time. Raising his head, Li Sai looked at the 5,000 Wuxiang recruits at the top of the cliff. Soldiers were trained for 1,000 days to be used in a single moment. Li Sai was well aware that this was the time for this army to test their skills. Return. The loud and clear voice was like thunder exploding, resounding through countless mountains. An hour later, under the watchful eyes of the Wuxiang people, an army of 5,000 majestically left Wuxiang village. At this moment, no one knew that the future of the Central Plains and the foreign kingdoms would change with this first batch of Wuxiang soldiers. Several hours later, Wang Chong received news of Li Sai's return. Standing on the tall steel walls, one could see a fully armored army in the distance, sweeping through a cloud of dust. This army of around 5,000 exuded the aura of an army of 50,000, or even 100,000. This was an astonishing momentum that could topple mountains and rend the earth. But most astonishing of all was the speed at which these 5,000 people advanced. Although they were walking, they moved with incredible speed, like galloping horses. Chapter 744. The army also had to move rapidly, and it was normal for soldiers to travel 100 li in a day for some special missions. However, even the fastest army couldn't reach half of these people's speed. It was even more impossible for them to maintain an orderly formation while sprinting at high speed like them. When tens of thousands of powerful soldiers moved in the same manner and marched in the same manner, the impact and shock they produced was indescribable. Impossible. These soldiers are so strong. They're so obedient, and there's not even the slightest bit of chaos. Where did Marquis find such a formidable force? What a powerful aura. It's even more formidable than the white braves attacking the city last night. Are these the helpers Marquis found? Inside and outside the walls, the craftsmen and guards were all sighing in amazement. These are the Wuxiang soldiers that Marquis found. On the southwest wall, Zhang Shouji was currently inspecting the walls, and as he saw the Wuxiang soldiers from the east, he couldn't help but sigh. He was one of the few people who knew of the existence of Wuxiang village, but this was his first time seeing the soldiers of Wuxiang village. Truly formidable. This aura, no wonder Marquis would send General Li. Zhang Shouji quietly said to himself. He had experienced the bitter battles of the southwest. In the War of the Southwest, those who had survived the assault of the Mengshi, Yusang army had essentially been the elite of the elite. But Zhang Shouji felt that not even the most elite of the Southwestern Protectorate army could compare to the Wuxiang army that Li Sai was leading from the east. The Wuxiang soldiers were very fast, and in a few moments, they were less than several hundred zhang from the City of Steel. At this moment, the gate opened, and Wang Chong rode out with Qing Sanyuan and the others. Marquis. When he saw Wang Chong, Li Sai got down from his horse and strode over. He bowed in front of Wang Chong. Fortunately, I have completed the first phase of the Wuxiang soldiers' training. Please inspect them, Marquis. Wang Chong nodded. His gaze shifted from Li Sai to the 5,000 Wushang soldiers. These Wushang soldiers were completely different from when Wang Chong first met them. They were fully equipped with armor, and had already begun to take on the shape of the Wushang iron cavalry. Not bad, you've worked hard. Wang Chong patted Li Sai on the shoulder and turned his head. Li Sai truly was very capable. In a short month, he had been able to train these 5,000 Wushang soldiers into their current state. They were as immovable as a mountain and as aggressive as fire. There were probably only a few people in the army who could do this. He truly was worthy of being the future invincible great general. Go and rest. Leave the army in the back to me. Wang Chong said. From the isolated villagers of Wushang to the world-renowned Wushang Iron Cavalry, this process had not been accomplished in a single step. They had still not cultivated the martial arts that had been specially created for them, nor had they cultivated the Wushang halo that had been named after their village. Most importantly, they had still not obtained the warhorse that was the most important thing to a cavalry soldier. Everything is ready. All that's missing is the East Wind and Hulieg's warhorse. Wang Chong quietly said to himself. The 5,000 Wushang Iron Cavalry needed 5,000 warhorses, and only Hulieg could obtain the finest Turkic warhorses. Looking at the time, it's about time. I wonder how his preparations are going. There was a long border between Qixi and the Turkic steppe, where the Qixi Protectorate, the Biting Protectorate Army, and the Western Turkic Khaganate were garrisoned. These soldiers normally kept each other in check, maintaining peace and tranquility on both sides of the border. But at a time like this, it had become the greatest obstacle to Wang Chong's warhorses. 5,000 warhorses was no small number, and such a large herd could not possibly be hidden from the eyes and ears of the Qixi Protectorate Army, the Biting Protectorate Army, and the Western Turkic Khaganate. Given Wang Chong's relationship with the two protector generals, if he was discovered, there was an 80 to 90% chance that he would end up helping someone else. Moreover, such a large warhorse transaction would not be able to get past the Western Turkic Khaganate. After all, the Western Turkic Khaganate was currently hostile to the Tang dynasty. Now, it's up to him to use his own methods. Wang Chong quietly said to himself. It was rumored that as the #1 horse merchant of the Turkic steppe, Hulieg had many secret channels to trade in warhorses that allowed him to evade the eyes and ears of the border guards. Now was the time to test the veracity of those rumors. Everyone, follow me. Wang Chong quickly came back to his senses and waved his hand, leading his soldiers into the city of steel. The Turkic steppe stretched as far as the eye could see, a vast expanse of wild grass extending to the ends of the earth. Time seemed to stop here, the steppe blooming and wilting, a cycle that would continue until the end of time. Hiya! After an unknown amount of time, a sudden shout broke the silence of the grassland. In an instant, the ground rumbled, and the dense sound of hooves rang out. Thousands of tall and handsome warhorses with glossy fur galloped over from the southeast. Hiya! In the blink of an eye, another shout came from the southwest, and another large group of Turkic warhorses galloped out. And then from the northwest, the northeast, more and more warhorses were gathering. In the blink of an eye, all these warhorses had gathered together into a massive herd of more than 10,000 warhorses. Nay! In the midst of the shouts, the wranglers rode their horses and galloped around the herd of horses. They kept driving the horses to prevent them from getting separated. Boba, all 10,000 warhorses have arrived from the various tribes. They're the best warhorses and don't need to be trained. Saddles are all that's needed. While the other wranglers were driving their horses, a burly Turkic man with sideburns dismounted in the howling winds and swiftly made his way through the herd, stopping in front of a middle-aged Turkic man with 2 bronze skulls hanging from his shoulders. He was rather stout and had a slight belly. Boba was a title of respect. In the Turkic language, it meant revered master and most welcome guest. There was only one person on the Turkic steppe who could obtain this title and be welcomed by all the tribes, the #1 Turkic horse merchant, Wuxia. Ha ha ha, good. Help me tell the various chiefs that if they follow me, Wuxia, they will be able to eat and drink well. I, Wuxia, will definitely not mistreat them. I can now inform the young marquis to carry out the first transaction. Wuxia sat on a scarlet Fergana horse, looking at the vast herd of horses before him with a bold and forthright air. His laughter echoed over the steppe. Crash! 2 days later, a pigeon flew into Wang Chong's residence in the City of Steel. Within the residence, Wang Chong was seated behind a desk, silently flipping through the journey to the western regions that Yang Hongchang had sent over. This was a book introducing the various kingdoms of the western regions. Wang Chong had Yang Hongchang find it for him. Suddenly, Wang Chong's eyes widened when he saw the pigeon fly into the study. Wuxia. A black ribbon was tied to the right leg of the pigeon. Wang Chong immediately recognized it. He had given this to Wuxia so that he could communicate with him at any time. So fast. A hint of surprise flashed through Wang Chong's eyes as he swiftly grabbed the pigeon and removed the letter from its leg. Wuxia's handwriting was crooked, but the contents of the letter were exactly what Wang Chong wanted to hear. Young Marquis Wang Chong, the first batch of 10,000 warhorses has been prepared. We can begin the transaction in 2 days. We will hand over the money with the goods. I will personally deliver the warhorses to Sir's City of Steel. Although Wuxia had done his utmost to imitate the official language of the Tang dynasty, he had still ended up with something that sounded neither right nor wrong. But this was not important. The most important thing was that Wuxia had truly prepared 10,000 of the best Turkic warhorses. As expected, I didn't make the wrong choice. This Wuxia truly does have some skill. I didn't take the risk of sneaking into the western regions just to find him in vain. Holding the letter, Wang Chong's eyes lit up with joy. Wuxia had truly given him a pleasant surprise. 10,000 warhorses, and the best Turkic warhorses at that, was no small number. Such a large number of warhorses was like a great fire in the dark night, easily attracting the attention of others, especially the Western Turkic Khaganate. The moment they were discovered, the transaction would immediately be halted. But with Wuxia's incredible skill, he had managed to gather 10,000 of the best Turkic warhorses in such a short time. And from what he had said, he actually wanted to personally deliver the warhorses to the walls of the City of Steel. This truly was no small surprise. Is it Wuxia? A voice suddenly came from behind. It was Li Sai's voice. In the last few days, he had returned to the city and learned from Wang Chong about Wuxia's matter. Wang Chong nodded. I'll leave this matter to you. Take some people and get in touch with him. This general understands. Li Sai gave a serious nod. Wang Chong didn't need to explain just how important warhorses were to cavalry. Li Sai placed even more importance on this transaction with the Turks than Wang Chong. This transaction involves 1 million taels of gold. When the time comes, Wuxia will probably ask for a portion of the payment in advance. The gold is with Senior Zhang Shoji, so you can take some people to get it. All matters involving Wuxia will be left to you to handle. You can make decisions on the spot. If you discover that Wuxia is up to no good, you should know what to do. Wang Chong said. Although Wuxia's reputation as the #1 Turkic horse merchant resounded through the world, Wang Chong did not completely trust him, and he was also keeping an eye on him. If something had happened to Wuxia, or if he was plotting something from the shadows, Li Sai was completely capable of dealing with it. Yes. Chapter 745. Wang Chong viewed this first transaction with Wuxia with extreme importance. If this transaction was free of any schemes and everything went smoothly, then his plan could truly be carried out. If Wuxia could bring him one batch of high-quality Turkic warhorses, he could definitely bring a second, a third, and even more. Perhaps by borrowing the abilities of the #1 Turkic horse merchant, the Tang dynasty really might be able to obtain an endless supply of high-quality warhorses from the Turkic steppe, making up for the greatest weakness of the Tang dynasty in its last life. I truly am looking forward to it. Hulaeg, I hope that you won't disappoint me. Wang Chong muttered to himself. Outside the window, the wind was beginning to stir. No one knew that a storm was slowly sweeping across the western regions from the distant Wuxiang. Hulaeg truly was as cautious as Wang Chong had expected. After the first letter, Wang Chong quickly received a second letter from Hulaeg. He had even sent a servant to disguise himself as a Hu merchant dealing in jewelry to sneak into the city of steel. Before carrying out the first transaction, Hulaeg hoped to receive a deposit of 100,000 taels of gold. This caused no small amount of controversy among Wang Chong's subordinates, but in the end, it was Wang Chong who stood his ground and gave the 100,000 taels of gold to the servant. Those who wanted to do great things had to have the boldness to do so. It was impossible to not take any risks. Compared to the benefits that the Tang dynasty could obtain in the future, 100,000 taels of gold was truly nothing. After the first deposit was sent, the details of the transaction were quickly confirmed. The time was set for the following night, after the Z period. The transaction would take place 100 li to the northwest of the city of Steel, with the money handed over and the goods handed over. However, Hulaeg also made an additional request. He hoped that Wang Chong would personally attend the transaction. Time flew by, and 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. It was quickly time for the discussion of the transaction. The moon was dark, the stars were dim, and fierce winds howled through the sky. In the starry night, figures lined up neatly, waiting silently. Marquis, it's been so long, so why haven't the Turks appeared? Could it be that they won't come? After waiting for more than 4 hours, Cheng Sanyuan finally couldn't help but ask. Yes. The Turks can't be trusted. He clearly knows that our Tang dynasty is at war with the Western Turks, but he still sold us horses. This is truly suspicious. Could it be that they only came for the 100,000 taels of gold? Besides, if they wanted to trade, they should have come long ago. Su Shixian agreed. The agreed time for the transaction was the Z period, but dawn was approaching, and Hulaeg still had not appeared. This made Wang Chong's generals rather uneasy. Don't worry, it's only 100,000 taels of gold. Compared to the transaction amount we've agreed on, it's just a drop in the bucket. It's basically nothing. With Hulaeg's eyes, he wouldn't care. Wang Chong stood ramrod straight with his hands clasped behind his back, his long hair fluttering in the wind. Compared to the unease of his generals, Wang Chong was much calmer and more composed. Even though he had already waited for 4 hours, he showed no signs of irritation. The Turks are different from us Tang people. They don't have a strong sense of time. The agreement was made at the Z period, but they've delayed it until now. This is completely in line with their style. You'll get used to it once you interact with them more. Wang Chong indifferently said. When he was in the capital, he had also interacted with the Hu people. The Hu were lazy by nature and had no sense of time. They would often drink until daybreak and then continue drinking the next day. The agreed time would often be delayed by 2 to 3 days. In addition, the steppe was vast and boundless. If one galloped across it, the scenery would be the same no matter where one went. It would be truly strange for one to have any sense of time in such a place. If Hulaeg were to become so punctual, Wang Chong would truly begin to suspect that Hulaeg was up to something. Gallop, gallop. Just as they were talking, the sound of galloping horses came from the darkness. This sudden movement immediately attracted everyone's attention. Marquis, look over there. Someone had called out to them. Everyone turned in the direction of the galloping and saw a small figure galloping over from the distance. As it got closer, they could clearly see that it was a majestic warhorse, its mane flapping in the wind. Looking at the movement, posture, and speed of the warhorse, even those who didn't understand warhorses could feel that this was definitely a top-notch warhorse. The warhorse quickly galloped toward them. However, everyone's eyes were filled with confusion when they saw the warhorse. Wuxiang was desolate and remote. No masterless warhorse should have appeared here. And in this quiet and deserted night, what did a single warhorse mean? Hulayeg truly is a man of his word. I wasn't wrong about him. While everyone was confused, Wang Chang's ears twitched as if he had suddenly heard something. He chuckled. Su Ke, get ready. It'll be time for the transaction in a little while. Yes, Marquis. Su Ke glanced at the chest full of gold next to him and nodded. Although he still didn't understand what was going on, it was the duty of a soldier to obey orders. No matter what Wang Chong asked of him, he would carry it out 100% without any hesitation. Rumble. As they were speaking, the grass beneath their feet began to sway with the wind, and the earth began to rumble in the distance. In the beginning, it was faint and not very obvious. However, in just a short period of time, the low trembling sound became the roar of huge waves crashing against the shore. Look over there. Look over there. So many warhorses. Someone suddenly called out, and everyone quickly realized what was going on. Deep in the night, along the northwest direction, countless shadows of war horses could be seen, densely packed, galloping over from afar. The rumbling that everyone heard was the sound of those warhorses galloping together. Ha ha ha, young Master Wang, we finally meet again. While everyone was still attracted by the warhorse, a burst of rough laughter suddenly came from the back of the warhorse. Cree! Suddenly, a sharp cry came from the distance. The warhorses that were charging over like a huge wave suddenly slowed down. Furthermore, they split into two groups. And in the middle of these groups were several figures riding on warhorses, galloping toward Wang Chang's party. The person in the lead had a slightly plump figure, and two fist-sized objects on his shoulders were swinging back and forth. As the wind howled, they let out shrill cries like the weeping of ghosts. Wang Chong immediately recognized him as the #1 Turkic horse merchant, Hulayeg. Ha ha ha, I really didn't make a mistake. Wang Chang's eyes brightened in delight. Grabbing the reins of a warhorse, he leaped onto it and galloped off in Hulayeg's direction. Marquis, careful. Everyone panicked and hurriedly followed. In the distance, the two warhorses met, and Wang Chong and Hulayeg dismounted. Ha ha ha, young Master Wang, thank you, truly, thank you. To Wang Chang's surprise, the moment Hulayeg dismounted, he immediately went up and gave Wang Chong a passionate bear hug. Marquis. Before Wang Chong could say anything, the others were given a fright by this Turkic's actions. Chen Bin, Guan Yu, and the others subconsciously reached for their weapons. Don't panic. He means no harm. Wang Chong extended a hand and stopped the crowd. Looking at the overly enthusiastic Hulayeg, he chuckled. Sir Hulayeg, just what happened? Why are you suddenly thanking me? Of course, of course. Young Master Wang is truly a god. If I hadn't listened to you and kept my guard up, I really would have been schemed against by this lowly person. That bastard, I trusted him with all my heart and gave him all my property, and yet he treats me like this. Hulayeg excitedly said. Wang Chong was surprised at the start, but he quickly realized that Hulayeg was probably speaking of his steward, Yalug. In the western regions, when Wang Chong was leaving, he had warned Hulayeg to be careful of his steward called Yalug. It now appeared that Wang Chong's backup plan had worked. Young Master Wang, can you tell me? Just how did you discover him? Hulayeg raised his head and looked excitedly at Wang Chong. After Hulayeg and Wang Chong had come to an agreement, he had scoured the steppe to gather 10,000 of the best warhorses in preparation for the transaction with Wang Chong, and he had even arranged a time and place for the transaction with Wang Chong. But Hulayeg had never expected that just yesterday, when he was preparing to trade with Wang Chong, his trusted steward, Yalug, who he had always viewed as his trusted aide, would use this opportunity to flee with his concubine and all his wealth. It had to be known that Yulug controlled more than 80% of his wealth. This was the wealth he had accumulated after decades of hard work and risk. If he hadn't listened to Wang Chang's warning and sent people to monitor Yulug day and night, the consequences would have been unthinkable. Hulayeg had arrived 4 hours later than the agreed time precisely because of this matter. Now, Hulayeg truly rejoiced that he had listened to Wang Chang's warning. But now that this had happened, Hulayeg had an irrepressible thought: what are you talking about? Not even he had expected his steward to betray him, so how did a Han like Wang Chong know? I naturally have my own methods. And Sir Hulayeg doesn't believe that only the western regions and the steppe have Hu, right? And how does Sir Hulayeg think I found you? Wang Chong glanced at Hulayeg, a meaningful smile on his face. He naturally couldn't tell him about Yulug, but this matter was having an effect. Wang Chong could clearly sense that Hulayeg's attitude toward him was completely different from before. This was an effect that not even a large transaction of tens of thousands of taels of gold could achieve. Chapter 746. As expected, Hulayeg had been intimidated by Wang Chong. The Wang clan was one of the great clans of the capital, a clan of ministers and generals. Its influence spread throughout the court, and Wang Chong's hint was very clear. It wasn't just the western regions and the Turkic steppe that had Hu. The capital of the Tang dynasty also had many Hu, but this was a point that was easily overlooked. Wang Chong's meaning was that among the Hu of the capital that he knew, there were clearly other Hu who knew him. They had been the ones who had told Wang Chong about Yulug. Moreover, it had also been those who had told him about his time in the western regions. For a moment, as he gazed at Wang Chong, Hulayeg felt an unfathomable feeling. It was one thing for the Wang clan to have a lot of influence in the capital, but if he even knew about his steward and concubine, then the Wang clan's influence was simply too unfathomable. This made Hulayeg feel that this matter was deeply enigmatic and unfathomable. But the Hu had a completely different way of thinking from the Han. After his initial apprehension, Hulayeg quickly began to rejoice. With a friend like young Master Wang, what do I have to worry about? In order to express my gratitude to young Master Wang, I will give young Master 1,000 of the best warhorses of the Turkic steppe as a token of my gratitude. Young Master Wang, I have a feeling that we will be very good friends in the future. Hulayeg nudged Wang Chong's chest and heartily laughed. This was truly a surprise. The eyes of Qing Sanyuan, Su Shixian, Chen Bin, and Guan Yu all brightened, and even Wang Chong was greatly surprised. 1,000 warhorses were worth 100,000 taels of gold, but this wasn't much to the current Wang Chong. What was important was the warhorses themselves. These high-quality Turkic warhorses were truly priceless, and not even money could buy them. Moreover, this was precisely what Wang Chong needed the most right now. Hulayeg's forthrightness was truly surprising. At this moment, Wang Chong suddenly understood how Hulayeg had managed to simultaneously grasp the eastern and western Turkic khaganates and become the #1 horse merchant of the steppe. Good. Sir Hulayeg, I won't say any more polite words. I will accept this great gift. In the future, if Sir Hulayeg has any requests, please speak. As long as it is within my means, I will do my utmost to satisfy them. Wang Chong said. If this Hulayeg followed his original fate, he would only have 3 months at most before dying. This was also the reason why Wang Chong was in such a hurry to trade with him. But now that he had seen Hulayeg's forthrightness and gratitude, Wang Chong suddenly had a good impression of this #1 Turkic horse merchant. Although he didn't know if he could succeed, no matter what, he had to try and change the fate of the #1 Turkic horse merchant. In the future, this Hulayeg might be of great use in the Tang dynasty. After exchanging pleasantries, Wang Chong got straight to the point. Wang Chong had Su Kui hand over the remaining 900,000 taels of gold to Hulayeg. At the same time, he had Qing Sanyuan and the others inspect the Turkic warhorses that Hulaeg had brought with him. Hulaeg had brought with him more than 11,000 warhorses, all of them thick and muscular, brimming with strength and explosive power. Their coats were also glossy, giving them a divine appearance. Even someone who didn't understand horses could tell that this batch of warhorses was of high quality. Hulaeg had truly put a lot of effort into it. That's right, Sir Hulaeg, I'll give you a second piece of advice. Once the transaction was completed and the two sides were prepared to leave, Wang Chong suddenly stopped and gave Hulaeg an enigmatic smile. When Hulaeg saw this smile, his heart immediately began to thump, and he had a bad premonition. This was not the first time Hulaeg had seen Wang Chong smile like this. The last time he saw this smile, his subordinate Yulug had almost absconded with the money and taken more than half of his fortune with him. What does young Master Wang wish to say? Hulaeg will definitely listen. This time, Hulaeg respectfully bowed in accordance with the etiquette of the Central Plains. The Turkic steppe did not have this sort of etiquette. After the Yulug incident, one could easily imagine how much respect Hulaeg had for Wang Chong's opinion. If Sir Hulaeg believes in me, then for the next 7 days, it would be best if you don't leave your house. In addition, if you really can't avoid it, if you must go out, put on a piece of metal armor, and do your best not to go to the east. With these words, Wang Chong left. He left Hulaeg standing in a daze, speechless. Hiya! With a shout from the distance, more than 10,000 warhorses, driven by several hundred elite soldiers, quickly vanished into the darkness in a cloud of dust. Boba, is this Tang people just trying to scare us? We're on the steppe, and no one knows where we are. How did he know? Moreover, we've already met with the chiefs of the east. For at least 10 days, we'll be too busy to go to the east. In my view, this matter isn't reliable at all. What happened last time might have just been a coincidence, just a guess. One of Hulaeg's subordinates who had followed him for many years finally couldn't help but say. In truth, none of the Turks were very fond of the Tang people, and not even doing business could change this fact. In particular, Wang Chong's lofty and confident attitude made him even more displeased. Furthermore, isn't the old master a little too warm to that Han? He had followed the old master for so many years and done business with many people, but this is the first time he has seen the old master so warm to a Han, even gifting him 1,000 of the best Turkic warhorses for free. No, Waduchi, you're wrong. To his surprise, Hulaeg looked in the direction Wang Chong had disappeared, his brow creasing even deeper. The east he spoke of was not the eastern steppe of our western Turkic Han kingdom, but the eastern Turkic Khaganate. Hulaeg's words left the Turkic man called Wuwan dumbfounded. Hulaeg was a master of money and power, and it wasn't just in the western Turkic Khaganate that he had a wide network. In the steppe ruled by Uzmish Khagan of the eastern Turkic Khaganate, Hulaeg also had a close relationship with the chiefs of the various tribes there. Not long ago, Hulaeg had arranged to meet with several powerful tribal chiefs who had a close relationship with Hulaeg. But very few people knew of this matter, and Hulaeg had only made this decision not too long ago. But how did Wang Chong know? If he even knew of such a secret, it would be far too inconceivable. Could it be that he's trying to say that someone will try to harm me at that time? Hulaeg muttered to himself. He wanted to treat Wang Chong's warning as a joke, but with Yulug's gem in front of him, Hulaeg did not dare to treat Wang Chong's words lightly. Turning around, Hulaeg left, his mind full of thoughts. Putting aside the activity on Hulaeg and Uzin's end, the sun rose from the east and the darkness broke. The more than 11,000 Turkic warhorses that Hulaeg had provided suddenly appeared like a dark cloud around Wang Chong's city of steel, giving everyone a fright. The fact that Wang Chong had constructed a city in a single night was already astonishing enough, but now, he had produced so many warhorses. Everyone was stunned. Especially those spies, they were even more panicked. Messenger pigeons hurriedly flew in all directions. What? More than 10,000 warhorses? Have you gone crazy? How could there be so many warhorses? Even Fomenlinta, who had been caught up in the whirlpool of the imperial court and had been executed in Pulanhi's death, was given a fright. His first reaction was that this was impossible. Qixi was a vital route between the western regions and the interior, and it guarded 3 borders. Between the Tang dynasty in Uzan, between the Tang dynasty and the western Turkic Khaganate, and between the Tang dynasty and the western regions, all 3 directions were filled with his soldiers. It wasn't just 1 or 2 warhorses. Such a massive number could not possibly be hidden from his eyes and ears. If Wang Chong really had obtained so many warhorses, how could he not have heard anything about it? Could it be that all the well-trained warhorses under his command were useless? Moreover, he could understand the construction of the city in one night, but how could so many warhorses appear in one night, and the border guards didn't even notice it at all? What was going on? Could it really be a miracle that could create something from nothing? He would never believe such a ridiculous piece of news. "Milord, this general has already sent 3 groups of men to investigate. This matter is absolutely true. This general can guarantee it with his life." The kneeling general hurriedly said. In Qixi in the western regions, all the enemies in the area were primarily cavalry. The Uzan was like this, the Turks were like this, the kingdoms of the western regions were like this, and even the distant Abbasid Caliphate and Karak Spazinu were like this. In such a complicated environment, one could easily imagine just how important warhorses were. Wang Chong only had a small fief here, but he had more than 10,000 warhorses. And even the Protector General, the most important Protector General in charge of all of Qixi, only had a little more than Wang Chong. How could anyone accept this result? As Fuman Lingcha stood in the hall, he stared blankly at his anxious subordinates, his face flushed with anxiety. At this moment, Fomenlinta was far from the only one shocked by Wang Chong's 10,000 Turkic warhorses. That brat actually has this kind of ability? In the distant Big Dipper city in Longxi, Geshu Han's eyes flashed with a bright light as he slowly stood up, his hands propping up the red sandalwood table. He had to admit that the youngest son of the Wang clan had truly given him a major surprise. For the first time, he suddenly realized that some things had exceeded his expectations. In Qixi, what is Fomenlinta's reaction? Geshu Han suddenly asked. Fomenlinta is still busy dealing with the questions of the imperial censors, so he probably doesn't have the energy to pay much attention to what's going on over there. But based on the information we've obtained, Fomenlinta has probably flown into a thunderous rage. A Big Dipper army officer next to Geshu Han said. That's to be expected. Given his relationship with the youngest son of the Wang clan, he would never be happy. Chapter 747. He raised his head to look at the ceiling of his study, but his consciousness was not there. Warhorses were far too attractive. In the previous crisis, the Big Dipper army had lost many warhorses in its battle with Ritadra Konglo and Duso Mengpoch. Afterward, Geshu Han had made a request to the imperial court's imperial steward, hoping to obtain more warhorses. But warhorses had always been a shortcoming of the imperial court. Geshu Han had requested for them for so long, but he had still not seen any warhorses. But Geshu Han had never expected that in the distant Wuxiang, he would see what the Big Dipper army needed the most. The best warhorses, this was an allure that not even Geshu Han could resist. Geshu Han suddenly realized that he had been underestimating Wang Chong's usefulness. He had something on him that all protector generals urgently needed. 10,000 warhorses isn't something a tiny Wuxiang can digest. Qing Zhe, write a letter to the imperial court for me. Have the imperial steward give us a portion of the warhorses. In addition, send a letter to that youngest son of the Wang clan. Geshu Han said. This. Milord, do we have to admit defeat to that brat? One of Geshu Han's subordinates, Qing Zhe, exclaimed in shock. He clearly remembered that the great general had given him an order to deal with that youngest son of the Wang clan, but in the blink of an eye, the great general's attitude had undergone a complete reversal. Moreover, for a great general like him to admit defeat to a junior who was far beneath him in age, experience, and status, it would be far too shameful. The entire Big Dipper army would probably lose all face. Who said we were going to admit defeat? We still have to take the warhorses for the sake of the public. As for our relationship with that brat, it's a private matter. If that brat can't even handle this little pressure, we should have him withdraw as soon as possible. In the end, that will be for his own good. Geshu Han stroked his beard and indifferently said. To the west of the western regions, in the distant 4 garrisons of Anshi, there were also people paying attention to the activity in the city of Steel. Whoosh! A messenger pigeon flew down from the sky. However, this messenger pigeon did not fly into the hands of Gao Xianji or Feng Changqing, the 2 twin paragons of the empire. Instead, it fell into the hands of a black-faced general with a full beard. All the extremely important news sent to Anshi had to pass through this trusted general of Gao Xianji's, and only then would it be delivered to Gao Xianji. More than 11,000 of the best Turkic warhorses. How can there be such absurd news? What are those scouts and spies at the front thinking? More than 11,000 of the best Turkic warhorses, do they know how much it costs? Furthermore, this was not something that could be achieved with money alone. Last time, the Protector General wanted to trade for a better batch of warhorses with the Turks, but he was immediately rejected. Not even the Lord Protector General could do it, so how could a brat still wet behind the ears? Moreover, with Fomenlinta here, how could he allow so many warhorses to pass? The black-faced general snorted as he disdainfully tossed out the letter, which shattered into pieces in the air. The Protector General and the others are already troublesome enough. There's no need to send this letter to them. Yes, General. With these words, the surroundings quickly fell silent. In the distant Biting Protector General and Sishun, the news had also reached the ears of the Biting Protector General. But unlike in other places, when Sishun received the news, the entire Biting Protectorate army began an investigation along the border of Chishi. At the same time, a messenger bird flew over mountains and rivers, flying toward the distant capital. Interesting. Geshu Han, Fomenlinta, and Sishun, and the other Hu generals have jointly submitted a memorial to the imperial court, requesting soldiers from us. In the city of Steel, Wang Chong put down the letter from the imperial court and chuckled. The mighty protector generals and great generals of the empire had actually jointly requested a warhorse from a nobody like him, a newly established and powerless nobody. Just the thought of it was inconceivable. Marquis, they want a piece of the pie this time. Marquis spent so much effort and 1 million taels of gold, but they want to take advantage of the situation without paying anything. Aren't they going too far? The people in the room were all indignant. Wang Chong had personally gone to the western regions and taken care of all the obstacles. He had also spent a great deal of gold to obtain more than 11,000 of the best Turkic warhorses. These warhorses had only just arrived at the city of Steel, and these people already wanted to ask for benefits. How could there be such a good thing in the world? Marquis, this matter is not easy to deal with. Warhorses are goods controlled by the imperial court. We have more than 10,000 warhorses here, which is already a violation of the law. If the Protector Generals want to make a fuss about this, Marquis will find it very difficult to get anything out of it. Behind him, Li Sai, who was more than 2 meters tall like a huge mountain, suddenly spoke. Before being transferred here by Wang Chong, he had served in the Biting Protectorate for a period of time, so he knew a few of the imperial court's regulations regarding warhorses. Moreover, Biting bordered the eastern and western Turkic Khaganates, and its regulations regarding warhorses were particularly strict. Thus, the transaction between Wang Chong and Huleeg was strictly speaking in violation of the imperial court's warhorse regulations. If Fomenlinta and the other protector generals were to use this matter to make a fuss, Wang Chong would truly find it impossible to defend himself. If they want to do this, they need to have the ability. Wang Chong smiled, his right hand lightly tapping on the table. His expression was calm and composed, devoid of any panic. If they want to use violating the imperial court's warhorse regulations to threaten me, then they've really made a mistake. The imperial court was the one in charge of this transaction, and I was just the middleman. After these 10,000 warhorses, 90% of the remaining warhorses will be handed over to the imperial court to be managed by the imperial horse supervisor. If this transaction with Huleeg went smoothly, it would reach an enormous number of 300 to 400,000 warhorses, and under certain circumstances, this number could even double. Such a massive number was not something that Wang Chong and his tens of thousands of Wuxiang soldiers could digest. In Wang Chong's plan, the other warhorses had originally been for him to act as the middleman and have the imperial court purchase them. Fumeng Lingcha had truly made a mistake in trying to use this point to deal with him. And Wang Chong still had the King of Song behind him. That's right, there's also a letter from Big Dipper Great General Geshu Han requesting warhorses. Marquis, should we give them to him? Su Kai suddenly said. Other than the pressure from the imperial court, the City of Steel had also received a letter from Geshu Han in the name of the Big Dipper army, hoping to obtain some warhorses from Wang Chong. Of the Protector Generals, he was the only one who had sent a private message to Wang Chong. The study instantly fell silent. No one dared to speak on matters involving the Protector Generals of the Empire. Every move made by these titans would have far-reaching effects that would often involve countless people. No one dared to make any rash comments on this matter. Tap tap. Wang Chong lightly tapped the table with the index and middle fingers of his right hand, a pensive look in his eyes. Geshu Han had actually sent him a private letter, and in this sort of situation, requesting warhorses. To be honest, this was rather surprising to Wang Chong. Interesting. This Big Dipper Great General really doesn't play by the rules. Wang Chong muttered to himself, a faint smile on his lips. Give it to him. Wang Chong suddenly said. These two simple words were like a boulder crashing into the hall, causing a massive uproar in the hall. Marquis, Geshu Han is a who. He doesn't have any good intentions in doing this. And Marquis, have you forgotten? He was the one who wanted to deal with Marquis after the regional commander's incident. Absolutely not. Geshu Han is still opposing Marquis, and the Big Dipper army's scouts still haven't left. If Marquis gives him warhorses, wouldn't that be letting him off too easily? Wang Chong's decision took everyone by surprise, and even Li Sai raised his eyebrows in surprise. Marquis, given Geshu Han's personality, what if he takes our benefits and then comes back to deal with us? Li Sai said. Ha ha ha, Geshu Han sent me a letter because he believed that I wouldn't give it to him. If I really did that, he would look down on me and think that I'm narrow-minded. Moreover, business is business, and private is private. In the last battle, the Big Dipper army lost many men to defend Longxi against the Yuzhen. Men are easy to replenish, but warhorses are not. This is also the reason why he sent me a letter asking for warhorses. I will definitely give him warhorses, but not because of Geshu Han, but for the sake of my Tang dynasty. Didn't he send a letter asking for 1,000 warhorses? Give him 2,000. In addition, tell him that the extra 1,000 are for the commoners of Longxi. Wang Chong opened his eyes and rapped on the table. Longxi was the Tang dynasty's barrier, and Geshu Han's Big Dipper army was its only defense. Behind him were the millions of Longxi commoners. If the Big Dipper army was defeated, the southwest would repeat itself. This was also the main reason why Wang Chong was willing to give him 2,000 warhorses. And there was one more thing that Wang Chong did not say. In that battle in Longxi, the Yuzhen had dispatched the long-dormant Great General Witadra Konglo. The effects of that battle on the Big Dipper army were far more severe than imagined. The biggest impact was that there were too many casualties and a severe shortage of warhorses. As a result, in Wang Chong's memories, a force of around 2,000 Yuzhen cavalry had broken through the Big Dipper army's blockade and charged into the interior of Longxi. At the time, it was precisely because the Big Dipper army was severely lacking in cavalry that this force had slipped through the net. Later on, this Uzun cavalry went on a killing spree, resulting in the deaths of more than 10,000 people and the destruction of several dozen villages. This matter caused such a ruckus that it even alarmed the imperial court and came to be known as the Longxi massacre. At the time, a painter who happened to be passing through Longxi had drawn this tragic scene and sent it to the capital, causing a huge uproar. Everyone who saw this painting wept and grieved. In the end, Gishu Han was also implicated and forced to leave the Big Dipper army and return to the capital to explain his position to the imperial court. On the surface, Gishu Han's request for horses seemed to be a test, but in truth, it was because the Big Dipper army's shortage of warhorses had reached an extremely severe level. Wang Chong could disregard Gishu Han, but he could not ignore the Longxi massacre in his memories. Now that he could do it all over again, Wang Chong naturally would not allow it to happen again. 2,000 warhorses was enough to make up for the Big Dipper army's lack of manpower. At the very least, it should be enough to deal with those 2,000 Uzun cavalry. Marquis is wise. Your subordinate was foolish. Everyone in the room was completely convinced by Wang Chong's words. In terms of breadth of mind and boldness, Wang Chong far surpassed them. This was also one of the reasons they were willing to follow Wang Chong. Chapter 748. Li Sai, I'll leave this matter to you. Wang Chong turned his head and said. Yes, Marquis. Li Sai hurriedly bowed. After taking care of a few trivial matters in the City of Steel, Wang Chong stood up and stretched as he looked out the window. It's time to take care of another matter. Wang Chong stretched his body a few times before leaving the room. The outer walls of the City of Steel were almost complete, and the Wuxiang army and Turkic warhorses had both arrived. The plan he had in mind could finally be carried out. Wang Chong had not established a corner of Wuxiang for the sake of peace, but to fend off the Western Turkic Khaganate to the east and the Uzun to the west. He wanted to completely alter the environment on the Qixi strategic route so that the Anxi Protectorate army and the upcoming Battle of Talas could be fully prepared. Now that everything was ready, all that was left was the east wind. Bang! Pushing open the door, Wang Chong, dressed in an azure robe, stepped over the threshold. A few moments later, he heard a deafening roar. Turning left from the room, he could see 5,000 Wuxiang soldiers seated on tall Turkic warhorses in the distance, undergoing rigorous training under the sun. The ground in front of them was densely packed with tens of thousands of wooden stakes. The distance between these stakes varied from long to short, wide enough for a carriage to pass while narrow enough for a horse's legs to pass. Moreover, there was no pattern to the placement of these stakes. The disorderly horse stakes had been created by Wang Chong in his last life, a top-notch training method used to train cavalry as quickly as possible. In this life, he had used it as the first lesson for the Wuxiang soldiers, horsemanship. Neigh. With a long neigh, 5 or 6 Wuxiang soldiers mounted their warhorses and galloped forward. Amidst the impassioned cries, the warhorses could be seen circling back and forth, sometimes to the left and sometimes to the right, constantly changing between the densely packed wooden stakes. Wuxiang's physical agility and quick reflexes, which he had cultivated in the mountains, played a huge role at this time. No matter how narrow the training stakes were, and no matter how densely packed they were, they could always find a path through them, and they could easily pass through them. If one did not know about it beforehand, it would be hard to believe that this was actually the first time they had come into contact with a warhorse. Neigh. A moment later, 5 or 6 Wuxiang cavalrymen leaped out of the disorderly horse stakes with a loud neigh. Other than the last one who had his leg slightly scratched, the other Wuxiang cavalrymen were not even scratched. Good. Heartfelt cheers and praises suddenly rang out from all directions. All of the city guards and experts from the aristocratic families who were watching from the sidelines applauded enthusiastically. There were tens of thousands of wooden stakes in this disorderly horse stakes. At first, when they saw these stakes, no one understood what was going on. Only when the elite cavalrymen personally stepped into it, out of 10 elite cavalrymen, 8 of them fell on the road. The other 2 managed to pass through more than half of the disorderly horse stakes, but in the end, they still couldn't pass through this stretch of wooden stakes. After trying this more than 10 times, the crowd finally gave up completely. They knew that this stretch of wooden stakes was not as simple as it looked. But these Wuxiang soldiers were like natural cavalrymen. All the obstacles, all the wooden stakes, could not stop them. The crowd had been watching from the sidelines for a long time, but up until now, they had not seen a single Wuxiang soldier riding a warhorse into a wooden stake. Their reaction and speed were so strong that it made people's hair stand on end. From the beginning, they were strangers to the present. All of the city guards and aristocratic families' experts were full of admiration for these Wuxiang cavalrymen who appeared out of nowhere. But military training was not limited to this type of disorderly horse stakes. Ready. Begin. Gallop, gallop, gallop. Following a series of hurried galloping sounds, dust billowed. A Wuxiang cavalryman, dressed in black armor and holding a long spear, lowered his body, crouched on the back of his horse, and suddenly charged into the distance like lightning. Bang! Before anyone could react, a series of afterimages flashed in the air, and a few hundred feet away, a loud bang rang out. A huge steel plate, more than half a foot thick and incomparably hard, had its center suddenly caved in, twisting into a huge fried dough twist. At the center of the fried dough twist were 2 deep and obvious horse hoof prints. Wang Chang's gaze flashed past the Wuxiang cavalrymen who were in the middle of a cavalry sprint training. As he continued to move forward, he looked in other directions. Kill! Kill! In the distance, 2 Wuxiang cavalrymen wielding wooden sticks charged towards each other amidst waves of battle cries. Whoosh! In the instant that the 2 crossed paths, one of the Wuxiang cavalrymen was as agile as a leopard. Like a nimble leopard, he flashed under the horse's belly, and from an extremely tricky angle, he kicked towards the cavalryman on the horse's back. But with a bang, this confident kick actually missed. Before the Wuxiang cavalryman could react, a foot also kicked out from under the horse's belly, hitting his shoulder and sending him flying. That kick was extremely powerful, and the Wuxiang cavalryman who was kicked rolled on the ground for more than 10 times before stabilizing himself. Wherever he passed, deep plow marks were left on the ground. The Wuxiang were born warriors, and even more so, born knights. Such nimble movements were not easy to achieve even for the veteran cavalrymen with rich experience. But to the Wuxiang cavalry, it was a piece of cake. Even though he had known this for a long time and had seen it with his own eyes, Wang Chong still couldn't help but feel deeply moved when he saw it again. Strength, dexterity, speed, reaction speed, these were the Wuxiang cavalry that had been tempered in the mountains. They naturally possessed an advantage that surpassed the Yuzhan White Braves, the Mamelukes, and the Turkic Wolf Fang cavalry. This was something that none of the other 3 armies could compare to. It's about time to teach them that thing. With this thought in his mind, Wang Chong quickly summoned a Turkic warhorse, mounted it, and galloped toward the training grounds. The city of steel was enormous, 5 to 6 times the size of an ordinary city. It was at this time that the greatest benefits were on display. Even in this city, before all the restaurants, teahouses, and inns had been built, there was enough space for the 5,000 Wuxiang cavalry to gallop about and train in any area. Roar! When the warhorse was still 100 some zhang from the training grounds, a long howl like that of a dragon or a tiger resounded through the air. Got it! Upon hearing this sound, all the Wuxiang cavalry in the middle of their training began to gallop over. In just a few seconds, they had assembled into ranks, their backs ramrod straight and their spirits high as they stood in front of Wang Chong. As they gazed at this young marquis, who was even younger than them, all the Wuxiang cavalry revealed deep respect and admiration in their eyes. Ever since they had left Wuxiang village, the more they understood about Wang Chong, the more they admired him. The young marquis, the son of Heaven's disciple, the lord of the city of steel, the one who had built a city in a single night, who possessed extraordinary wealth and connections, and an illustrious status, and then there was the fact that he had received orders in the face of peril to reverse the tides. In a situation that everyone knew was doomed to lose, he had routed the powerful Mengshi, Yusang army commanded by a famed general and left behind more than 400,000 corpses. All of this had surpassed the imagination of an ordinary person, even to the proud Wuxian cavalry. Wang Chang's actions and the ability he had displayed beyond his age had even won the admiration of the Wuxian cavalry. After all, even the most admired person of the Wuxian cavalry, Li Sai, was Wang Chang's subordinate, and he was loyal and devoted to Wang Chong. Under this influence, all the Wuxian cavalry viewed Wang Chong as a god. Ready. You will now begin to count off. 5 to a squad, 10 to a squad, and 100 to a squad. Begin the formation. Wang Chong sternly said. Yes. Soon after, a resounding count began to ring out. While everyone was counting off, Wang Chong quickly turned his head to Li Sai. Begin. Distribute that item. Yes, Marquis. Li Sai respectfully said. Wang Chong nodded, and after saying this, he turned his head away, no longer looking at her. The Wuxian cavalry had already reached a certain level of training. Now, it was time to teach them the famous halo of Wuxian, the Wuxian halo, which had been specially created for the Wuxian people. The Wuxian halo had been a war halo created by several thousand of the continent's strongest experts, including Wang Chong, based on the unique traits of the Wuxian people. This was a supreme art that only the Wuxian could learn. The White Braves were renowned throughout the world because of their Zhangsheng halo, and the Holy War halo beneath the hooves of the Abbasid Caliphate's Mamelukes was also incomparably sharp. The Wuxian soldiers would find it very difficult to defeat them with their current strength. Only by regaining the famed Wuxian halo, the strongest cavalry of the continent, the strongest Wuxian cavalry of the continent, would they have a chance of suppressing them. Not even the otherworldly invaders could stop this halo, much less the White Braves of Uzan. Cree! Cree! Just when Wang Chong had Li Sai pass on the Wuxian halo, a shrill cry came from the sky. Bang! Cries of alarm came from the city of steel, and then a large bird dropped from the sky, smashing into the ground, its mangled body unmoving. This sudden development startled the nearby craftsmen, but the Wuxian cavalry remained motionless, not even creasing their brows. Wang Chong raised his head and saw that the birds that had been circling over the city of steel had suddenly split into several camps and were engaged in fierce combat, their shrill cries echoing through the air. Ah! Look over there. Another large bird has fallen. How fierce! What's going on? They're fighting. Chapter 749. Chapter 747, Swoosh. 1, 2, 3. One by one, the vicious birds fell from the sky, wailing miserably. Amongst the various factions, Wang Chong was the undisputed main character, so a significant portion of the birds had gathered around Wang Chong's head. One bird after another plummeted to the ground. Bzzz. One of the winged sea eagles screeched as it shot toward Wang Chong's head like a shooting star. But before it could hit the ground, it was stopped by an invisible barrier above Wang Chong's head and bounced to the side. Reporting. Marquis, the Eagle team has finished gathering. By the end of the day, we will be able to drive out all the birds within 100 li of the city of steel. As Wang Chong was looking up at the sky, a young and somewhat excited voice came from the side. The young Zhang Ke, Eagle's disciple, was kneeling next to him. His face was red, and his face was full of shame. When the White Bear soldiers had used the darkness of night to invade the city of steel, Zhang Ke had been investigating the border between Qixi and Uzan, but he had been tricked by the White Bear soldiers. This was a severe dereliction of duty. Even now, Zhang Ke had been blaming himself. In establishing the Eagle team, Zhang Ke had hoped to use it to atone for his crimes and change Wang Chong's impression of him. Rise. Wang Chong indifferently said and waved his hand. Zhang Ke was still young, and he had run into a crafty foe like Dian Mangpoch. Coupled with the fact that this was his first solo mission, he had no experience and was unfamiliar with the border between Qixi and Uzan. For Wang Chong to make this sort of mistake was completely normal. On the other hand, the Eagle team he had formed had left a deep impression on him. Cree! A mournful cry came from the sky, drawing Wang Chong's attention. He looked up and saw the listless rock eagle called Little Sha, who had perched on Zhang Ke's shoulder. It had spread its wings, its sharp beak nimbly pecking at the surrounding birds that were much larger than it. The Turk's azure condor, the Gogrian's gerfalcon, and the western region's rock eagle all had their necks and wings severed by this small rock eagle. Wailing in pain and dripping with blood, they plummeted from the sky. Not only that, but there were also other eagles and vultures working together around this rock eagle, attacking the other eagles like a marching army. In the sky, all the blue eagles, sea eagles, and rock eagles sent by the various forces were beaten into a mess. The eagles that couldn't defeat the enemies screamed and fled into the distance, their bodies covered in blood and feathers. These eyes that had shrouded the city of steel for several months had finally been driven clean by Zhang Ke's eagle team. Well done. In the future, I'll leave the skies of Steel City to you. Remember, don't make the same mistake again. Wang Chong said without turning his head. Yes, Marquis. Zhang Ke's face was red, knowing that he had finally obtained Wang Chong's forgiveness. Marquis, be at ease. Even if Zhang Ke dies, he won't let the same thing happen again. Wang Chong grunted and waved his hand. Zhang Ke quickly retreated. All that's left is Su Ke. Wang Chong quietly said to himself. If a worker wanted to do a good job, he first had to sharpen his tools. The scouting birds in the skies above the city of steel had been cleared away, leaving only the scouts sent by the various factions. As these thoughts flitted through Wang Chong's mind, he quickly heard cries of alarm in the distance. What are you doing? We're from the Qixi Protectorate. Release me. Are you going to be reasonable or not? Furious shouts could be heard from outside the city, but the only response they received was a barbaric and tyrannical voice. Less chatter. Then there was an earth-shattering boom, followed by the neighing of horses, and the sound of hurried hooves galloping in all directions. Wang Chong couldn't help but smile at this voice. It was not just the guards of the City of Steel who had taken action this time, but also the experts of Wuxian village, Huang Badian among them. The sound that Wang Chong had heard was the sound of Huang Boshan's stone general attacking the scouts. As an official of the imperial court, Wang Chong could not attack the Qixi Protectorate army, but Huang Badian was different. With these two working together, it wouldn't be long before the scouts around the City of Steel were completely wiped out. His plan could finally be carried out. Shi Xian, tell Senior Zhang Shouji to notify all the sword shops and smiths in the capital and the provinces. The next step of the plan can begin. Wang Chong said. Yes, Marquis. Su Shixian flew off with the order. Everyone, get ready. Once all the preparations had been made, Wang Chong finally turned his head to the Wuxian cavalry. As the former commander-in-chief of the Wuxian cavalry, he finally needed to personally train them for the second step. The once strongest war saint of the Central Plains and the strongest army of the Central Plains had finally reunited in this tiny city of steel, becoming one. A butterfly flapped its wings, stirring up a storm on the other shore. At this moment, no one but Wang Chong knew that the entire western regions would undergo a massive transformation. Flap flap. Several days later, in the distant Longxi, a messenger pigeon descended from the sky and disappeared into Big Dipper City with the sound of flapping wings. Milord, Wuxian has sent a letter. In Big Dipper City, Gishu Han's brow rose as he received the letter from his subordinate, and then he seemed to guess at something and smiled. Milord, this brat can't keep his cool at all. A Big Dipper army officer next to him laughed. Huh, Milord wants soldiers from him. It would be strange if he was happy. He sent a letter to Milord. He's definitely venting his frustrations in it. In my view, there's no need for Milord to read it. The surrounding officers of the Big Dipper army began to speak. Geshu Han silently smiled. I still have to read it. Since he's using the military's relay station and the imperial court system, it's not a private matter. If I refuse to read it just because he's mentally cursing me, I would appear narrow-minded and be looked down upon by him. Geshu Han indifferently said. Lord Protector General's words are reasonable. It's good to read it. If this brat is rude to Milord, there's a letter as proof. When the time comes, Milord should submit a report to the imperial court to teach him a lesson. Right. In the end, he's still too young and inexperienced. The surrounding officers roared with laughter. Geshu Han only faintly smiled, shook his head, and quickly opened the letter. To see the words is to see the person. To Wuxiang Wang Chong. From the first line, Geshu Han could already sense the sharpness of the letter. As expected. Geshu Han faintly smiled, unsurprised. But after just a few lines, Geshu Han's complexion immediately warped. Milord, what's wrong? Was it because that brat spoke rudely and went too far? The officers in the room had been paying attention to Geshu Han this entire time, and when they saw that his complexion was off, they immediately thought of something and began to sulk. Lord Protector General is, after all, a great general of the empire with great authority and great achievements. That brat wouldn't really rely on the fact that he comes from a clan of ministers and generals to say some overly provocative and insulting words, right? That brat is going too far. Milord said he was borrowing it, but it was just a joke. He actually dared to insult Protector General in a letter. He deserves to die. General has guarded the western border for the empire, risking his life and making great contributions. Even the important ministers of the court don't dare to speak ill of Milord. This brat is too impudent. All of them were furious. If Wang Chong had just written a few words of complaint or sarcasm, the officers would have treated it as a joke. They wouldn't have bothered to lower themselves to his level. But from the look on the general's face, it was clear that this was no simple complaint or sarcasm. General, let me lead a group of soldiers to the city of Steel and capture that brat. Have that brat personally offer a humble apology in front of Milord. An agitated Big Dipper army general immediately said. You've misunderstood. Geshu Han finally spoke, his words instantly cutting off all the guesses of the officers in the room. His brow was deeply furrowed, as if he had encountered some perplexing problem. That youngest son of the Wang clan didn't insult me, ah. The officers glanced at each other in confusion. That brat had just obtained more than 10,000 warhorses, and the general had asked him for them without even saying a word. How could he remain so calm? Moreover, if he could really keep his composure, then why did he send this letter? Contrary to what you think, he told me in his letter that he had sent me the 1,000 fine horses I asked for, and that he had sent me another 1,000 horses in addition. Ah! In an instant, everyone was astonished. He really sent war horses, and an extra 1,000? How is that possible? You must know that 2,000 warhorses is enough to form a medium-sized cavalry unit, enough to have an effect on the battlefield. Given Milord General's relationship with that brat, would he really send 2,000 warhorses for nothing? At this instant, everyone was stupefied, and they simply didn't dare to believe their ears. Milord General. One of the officers in the room looked at Geshu Han cautiously, hesitating to speak. Take it and read it. Geshu Han said no more, holding the letter between the index and middle fingers of his right hand and handing it over. It was a simple letter of 5 or 6 lines, and it quickly passed through the hands of the officers. When they read its contents, they were dumbfounded. Contrary to what they had expected, there were no complaints. On the contrary, the tone was calm and serene. Most importantly, Wang Chong had actually agreed to Geshu Han's request. "Milord, is it possible that the youngest son of the Wang clan is just trying to deceive us?" A general of the Big Dipper army cautiously asked, voicing the question on everyone's mind. "In fact, Milord General and that Wang Chong have a hostile relationship. Would he really be so kind? Although I have my doubts, that brat shouldn't be lying. After all, he's from a clan of ministers and generals, and a gentleman's word carries enormous weight. Moreover, we have his letter." Geshu Han shook his head. Chapter 750. "But, milord," another general wanted to say something, but at this moment, a messenger from the Big Dipper army rushed into the hall like a gust of wind. Reporting. "More than 2,000 warhorses have been discovered 700 meters behind us. The enemy says that these warhorses are being gifted to our Big Dipper army, and they want our Big Dipper army to personally receive them. Our scouts have come to report, asking what we should do with them." The messenger kneeled on the ground, deep confusion in his eyes. Everyone in the Big Dipper army knew that they were severely lacking warhorses, but the fact that these warhorses had arrived so quickly and from a completely unexpected direction left them at a complete loss. Buzz. The messenger's voice was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. This news was like a slap to the face of all the Big Dipper army generals. All of them had complex expressions on their faces as they turned to Geshu Han. "I underestimated him." Geshu Han's expression was extremely solemn. "I'm far inferior to him in this round. Public is public, private is private. This youngest son of the Wang clan is much bolder than I am." Even now, Geshu Han had never met this youngest son of the Wang clan. Most of them had heard of him, but seeing was believing. Moreover, the majority of the Southwest's events were just rumors. Other than the people directly involved, no one knew just how much of an effect the youngest son of the Wang clan had had in all of this. But now, Geshu Han had to admit that he had been underestimating him all this time. He clearly knew that he didn't have a good relationship with Wang Chong, but for the sake of the greater good, Longxi, and the great Tang, he was willing to give him 2,000 cavalry. This was something that could only be done if one didn't have an extraordinary breadth of mind. In comparison, Geshu Han's previous actions had been far too petty. "Qingzi, send a letter for me. Thank the young marquis. Tell him that I have accepted the 2,000 warhorses and that the Big Dipper army owes him a favor." Geshu Han said, his heart filled with emotion. "Yes, General." A voice replied and quickly departed. Boom! As night fell and the dark clouds hung low, the gates of the city of steel rumbled open. A group of black-armored cavalry with a vigorous aura slowly galloped out like mountains. Beneath their feet were black halos that rumbled like metal, connecting into one another. At the very front of the group was a 17-year-old youth with a sharp nose, starry eyes, and long eyebrows. Behind him, a 2-meter-tall man who was twice the size of an ordinary person followed closely. "Marquis, where are we going now?" Li Sai said. After training in the city for more than half a month, this was the first time Wang Chong had taken the initiative to bring the Wuxian cavalry out of the city of steel. However, Wang Chong never made his plans clear, so even Li Sai didn't know where they were going. Soldiers are trained for 1,000 days to be used in a single moment. Their training is almost done. Now it's time to move on to the next phase of the plan. Wang Chong indifferently said. A light breeze blew by, causing Wang Chong's pitch-black hair to dance in the wind. Although he was only 17, Wang Chong's aura was growing more and more steady, his eyes growing more dignified and determined. Compared to his peers, Wang Chong's eyes were always able to see down to the smallest detail, allowing him to see into the distance where others could not. "Let's go." Wang Chong urged his steed forward and galloped out of the city. However, he wasn't heading toward the nearby Tibetan plateau. Instead, he was heading southwest toward Longxi. Wang Chong said nothing, and so did the rest of the cavalry. Several hundred li passed in the starry night, and the 5,000 best Turkic warhorses Wang Chong had purchased were proving their usefulness. In just 4 hours, the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry had traveled 700 to 800 li. The scenery on both sides of the road was constantly changing, from barren and barren to lush and verdant. At some point, they had reached the interior of Longxi. In the distance, in the darkness of the night, the silhouette of a huge mountain range towered into the clouds. It was reflected in everyone's eyes, spanning between heaven and earth. "Marquis, are we going to Big Dipper City?" Li Sai couldn't help but ask, a hint of worry in his eyes. Longxi was under the jurisdiction of Big Dipper Great General Geshu Han. Given the relationship between Wang Chong and Geshu Han, if he were to appear in the territory of the Big Dipper army with his 5,000 cavalry, it would likely incite a massive conflict. We have to meet Geshu Han, but not now." As if seeing through Li Sai's worries, Wang Chong heartily laughed, but his eyes were fixed on that pitch-black mountain in the distance that pierced into the clouds. Heaven Pillar Mountain. This thought flitted through Wang Chong's mind as he gazed at that towering mountain. "I've finally found it." There was a long border between Longxi and Uzan. The massive difference in altitude made it difficult for apes and monkeys to cross, much less humans. Even the ambitious Uzan who coveted the Central Plains had to shrink back, much less anyone else. Anyone who tried to forcibly pass through these places would end up dead in the end. But Wang Chong knew that there was a secret path here that could safely lead to the interior of the plateau. This was also the only path along the several thousand li border. That place had been buried for many years, and no one had ever paid attention to it or discovered it. Wang Chong had only discovered this secret passage by chance. And to discover this secret path, he had to find Heaven Pillar Mountain. In truth, this mountain had no name. Heaven Pillar Mountain had been named by Wang Chong himself. "Li Sai, pass on my order. Rest where you are and await my orders." Wang Chong ordered without turning his head. "Yes, Marquis." Li Sai was startled, but he quickly responded. "Zhang Ke. This lowly one is here." Not long after Li Sai left, Zhang Ke, clad in martial attire and with a rock eagle perched on his shoulder, rode up from behind. For this expedition, Zhang Ke and a portion of the Eagle team had been dragged along by Wang Chong. When an army set out, especially at night, the greatest taboo was to be discovered. This was why Wang Chong had brought Zhang Ke and his team of eagles with him. "It's time for you to take the field. Have your rock eagles and eagle teams go investigate." Wang Chong extended a finger and slowly swept it across the sky, stopping at the towering Uzan Plateau. "Yes, this lowly one will go." Zhang Ke stared blankly for a moment, and then he realized something. A hint of excitement appeared in his eyes. "Cree." A few moments later, a rock eagle unfurled its wings and soared into the sky from Zhang Ke's shoulder. Wang Chong sat on his horse, watching as the rock eagle flew higher and higher, eventually flying past the mountains and into the depths of the towering Uzan Plateau. "Dian Mangpoj, it's time for me to act." As Wang Chong gazed in the direction the rock eagle had disappeared, his lips curled into an almost imperceptible smile. It was only when the rock eagle took to the air and vanished into the depths of the plateau that Wang Chong's objective was revealed. More than half a month ago, when the White Braves had attacked the city, Dian Mangpoj had been frightened away by Wang Chong's will tactic. But this future king of the Uzan great general had turned back. After leaving the city of steel, he had gone straight to the Qixi Protectorate's camp on the border and killed 5,000 soldiers of the Qixi Protectorate, as well as an important general of Qixi, Pulanhe. Although these people had been Fulminlinta's soldiers, they were also warriors of the Tang dynasty. They had guarded the borders of the Tang dynasty, and in the end, they had died in the line of duty. Wang Chong had been in Wuxian at the time, but by the time he had received the news, it was already too late. Moreover, he did not have enough soldiers under his command to fight with Dian Mangpoj, so he had been forced to swallow his anger. But the warriors of the Tang dynasty would not die in vain. At the very least, as long as he, Wang Chong, still had a single breath left in him, he would not let any of the warriors of the Tang dynasty die in vain. The Pillar of Heaven Mountains was a secret passage that led directly to the interior of the Yuzhen Plateau. If his memory was correct, this secret passage led to the Yuzhen Plateau, a distance of 300 some li at most, which was the most famous place in the northern part of the Yuzhen, Sanka. This was the most famous recruit training camp of the Yuzhen. In the autumn of every year, from October to November, a large number of Yuzhen recruits would be sent there to undergo strict training. After completing their training, they would be sent to the various borders of the Yuzhen to fight for Yuzhen. But this was not the main goal of Wang Chong's trip. More importantly, Wang Chong remembered that Sanka was about to welcome a special batch of recruits, the Qinghai soldiers. In the future, Yusang would stand on the same level as the White Braves, another of its most elite soldiers. If everything went as expected, after they finished their training here, they would be able to wreak havoc in Qixi in less than 6 months, madly attacking all of the Great Tang. Longxi, Qixi, and Anxi would all be within their range of attack. If they were not eliminated, they would only grow more and more dangerous to the Tang dynasty in the future, becoming another existence of the Yuzhen Empire that, like the White Braves, posed an enormous threat to the Tang dynasty. This was the true goal of Wang Chong's trip. Dian Mangpoj, now is the time for you and the entire Yuzhen Empire to pay the price. As this thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind, he quickly calmed down. Cree! A sharp cry rang out. High up in the heavens, in the pitch-black night sky, a rock eagle spread its wings. It didn't move at all, riding the air currents as it whistled past. Swoosh, there was a flash of light, and in the blink of an eye, another black shadow whizzed past in the air not far away. 1, 2, 3, 4. Looking from afar, one eagle after another flew across the sky and circled around the area. There were rock eagles, turquoise eagles, green condors, and all kinds of other birds. Yuzhen was on friendly terms with the western regions and the Turks, so the rock eagles of the western regions and the green condors of the Turks were not rare. Moreover, Yuzhen would sometimes purchase the gerfalcons of Goguryeo to serve as scouts. Hey! Ha! You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.